Really?
Where is that?
For the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Hey, Deborah. Oh, gosh.
Oops.
You did, but I lost it.
It's yellow.
I know.
I don't know what I did with it.
It is no longer, you gave it to
I
me.
can't tell you.
Like who's coming?
I can go find it.
I think we can figure it out. All right, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we're going to call this meeting to order at 5:31. We'll begin with a roll call.
Sheena Martinez, District 1.
Paul Carey for District 2.
Philip King, District 3.
Harold Stein, District 4. Herb Dyer, District 5.
And Darren Schroeder, Mayor. We are all present. Next, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the prayer. We'll start with the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Pastor, if you could introduce yourself. I'm sorry, she gave me the introduction and I left it.
That's okay.
Over there.
My name is David Simonson with Casterville Community Church.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you please pray with me? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather peacefully tonight and to conduct the affairs of our community. I pray for our elected leaders and for those who are gathered with them, that you may guide by your wisdom and your grace. I pray for your protection over all these traveling tonight on our rainy roads. Thank you for the rain, and as a reminder of your abundant provision and miraculous love. In the name of Jesus Christ, your Son, my Savior, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. All right, next item is citizens' comments. If anybody would like to speak for citizens' comments, please step up here, state your name and your address, and please keep comments to 3 minutes or less.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff. It's a great day with rain and a brand-new term for our council. I want to speak tonight on
I'm sorry, could you state your name and address, please?
Well, I am Rudy Marino, 110 River Forest, here in Castroville. I want to speak about preservation and protection of existing neighborhoods. My spouse and I moved here about 12 years ago because our daughter was employed at Medina Valley Schools, but lived on the far west side of San Antonio. After considering San Antonio and nearby communities, we chose Castroville as a far superior place to live because of your city background, history, and fundamental qualities on which your town was built. Your entryway from the west offered a very tranquil view of the valley with church steeples visible above the tree canopy below. Entryways from the north and south revealed a peaceful approach surrounded by nice homes. However, the entryway from the east showed no distinction and seemed to signal just another average community. As I observe our River Bluff neighborhood, our entryway from Old Highway 90 now has a duplex with a side yard where the front yard should be and a backyard where the side yard should be. Recently, a travel trailer appeared on that property. Now the approach to our home from the north is marred by an unsightly metal fence extending to the street, the only such fence in the entire neighborhood, and totally out of character with River Bluff. I have sympathy with property rights and the urge to build anything I want. However, embedded in property considerations is the right to peaceful enjoyment of our homes. I understand that Texas law allows perimeter fencing primarily for security purposes. In this case, it is my opinion that this fence was not built out of security concerns because the driveway will not be gated or fenced, and the result will be a U-shaped dog run. My fear is that those pets will be intimidating and bothering pedestrians on our street as they enjoy their evening walks, and us as we enjoy our front yard. It seems to me that neighborhoods should accommodate and prioritize people, not pets and cars. I ask you to invite public involvement and take extra care in the planning and permitting process, particularly when an existing neighborhood is involved. Else the continued erosion of Castroville's small town qualities will mirror countless neighborhoods in large cities with fenced yards, guard dogs, and neighbors distrustful of each other. Existing neighborhoods deserve better. Please protect our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. And we cannot comment on anything spoken during citizens' comments, but please stick around for a little bit because we are talking about some of the things that you're talking about right here. So,
I'll be pleased to.
great, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, would anybody else like to speak for citizens' comments?
No, I'm not going to read from it. Kyle McVeigh, 307 Madrid, representing Castroville, Nip and Tuck. As I promised, I will be here at every meeting, I hope, to try to get you to move forward on purchasing land for the animal shelter. I know you have possibly the funds to do it, but let's just keep it moving forward. If we're going to work with the county, that's great. No problem with that because we'll probably be having a lot of county animals anyway. But just let's get past the talking and actually do something. And you're the folks that can do that. So please, please, make an effort to speak out to somebody in the county. I'll talk to Mr. Sitter to try, to get him in gear. But you do the same thing. I would appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kyle. Anybody else like to speak for citizens' comments?
Arnie DeLasse, 109 River Bluff here in Castroville. Just a notice or reminder, committee's been working on July 4th coming up. It seems like it'll be here tomorrow, but anyway, this year, everything that the city and group is going to do is on Saturday, July the 1st. We're looking for sponsors, whether it's individuals, businesses, or whatever. If you have any interest in doing that or becoming a sponsor, please get in touch with me or just the city, and they'll get in touch with me, and I will come visit you. There's different levels of sponsorships, and I have some forms with me tonight if anybody wants one. That's it. Thanks. See
Thank you, Arnie.
July 4th.
Thank you, Arnie.
All right, anybody else? Please.
Good evening. So, Frank Cook, I'm the fire chief for ESD1. Want to start, I hadn't had a chance to come and give a report here in the last few months, but a lot has changed, including we've hired an assistant chief to help us bring our EMS program on board. So as we continue to expand, I just wanted y'all to meet Assistant Chief Sarah Windsor. So she's been with us just over a month. Her plate is very full, but if she's involved at all, she is 100% functioning in the direction of the organization that we're going. I know y'all got the bulk of the update from me today, but it's looking like 1st of July is when your new ISO grade will go active. So the city will at least be a 4. So we're excited about that. We're going to stick around until refreshments, have anyone wants to chat with her. We won't eat refreshments, but we'll stick around to that.
You're allowed. You can eat, yes. For all you do, keeping us safe, yes.
So we can answer any questions then.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else for citizens' comments? Might as well.
Last opportunity. David Mers, 148 Village Path. Since I won't be able to be here for at least a year. Harold, I know that you did not run for city council. You were asked to be on it, and you were silly enough to say yes. Thank you for the service you've done to this city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here, here. All right, anybody else? I think that's everybody, almost. Okay, next item is swearing-in ceremony for incoming mayor, District 1, District 2, and District 4. So I think we're going to start with the mayor. This is the swearing-in, preceding the swearing-out. Yes.
Officially gets a swear in.
I, James Darren Schroeder,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of mayor for the city of Castroville,
of mayor for the city of Castroville,
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
preserve,
preserve,
protect,
protect
and defend the Constitution
the Constitution
and laws of the United States,
and laws of the United States
of this state,
and of this state.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Now you get to sign it, you'll be able to.
He's back.
You need to sign it. Here you go. It's not invisible ink, I don't think.
Oh, he's swearing in the others. Okay. Okay. All right.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Sheena Martinez,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of City Council District 1
of City Council District 1
for the city of Castroville of the state of Texas,
for the City of Castroville, State of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States and of this state.
of the United States and this state.
So help me God.
So help me God. Don't say that. That's why Joe stays at home.
Everybody else.
She disabled him, she beat him with a finger.
That's how we kept Christopher in line.
It worked. Look how that worked.
Yeah, he's an incident.
Oh, you're really quiet next time.
Yeah, now he's an incident baby.
Congratulations, and I'm sorry. All right. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Paul Terry,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of City Council District 2
of City Council District 2
for the city of Castroville of the state of Texas,
for the City of Castroville, State of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States and of this state.
of the United States and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
right.
David.
I state your name.
I, David Mers Jr.,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the
of
duties
City Council District 4
of City Council District 4
for the City of Castroville of the State of Texas,
for the City of Castroville of the State of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States and of this state.
of the United States and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Just sign that. The changing of the guard. And next we have
We have a break.
a break to celebrate and to do the official exchange.
Oh, yeah, we gotta do, I'm sorry.
Do we have, no, we have,
Mayor.
we still have, the changing of the guard.
Well, eventually, but he needs, he probably will run out of here and never come back, so we can go to now.
We need to make sure. Let me get this out.
He's anxiously trying to.
So this is to Harold Stein, District 4, 2022 to 2023. Thank you for your time representing the citizens of District 4 and the continued efforts in preparing the community for the future.
You got to pose, sir. You got to pose for the picture.
Speech.
This is going to go on the calendar.
He's just happy to be leaving.
Thank you for doing this. Okay, so then we're going to take a brief break at 5:47. We got to cut the Castroville.
That's right.
Looks like it's gonna keep going.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's not clear enough for long.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, more coming.
South of the incoming.
If you're here, you're invited to participate. Please come up, grab a drink.
Yeah, swirling
Okay.
on. Yeah, they said tomorrow and Thursday we're supposed to have a break, but then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is supposed to be nothing but rain. That's all right, you know what?
Tuesday, we're supposed to have dinner.
Yes.
He's bashful. Gonna take us a long break. Yeah. But it may still be okay, or not?
Well, the chance rain all the way through Monday now.
Sunday, we're going to execute Plan B. It's going to bashful. 20 by 15 fire cover in the back.
Captain Overtown?
Which is good.
Yeah, because that really can get to be after a while having this we did that, we cleared out the spot below the.
That's where all that stuff is. We are, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
No cake?
I'm actually not gonna bring the cake. I have to make a comment on how early. I've never seen them before. We were just sitting there like all the time we've had to sit. They're like forks in the cake. I've never seen them.
I think we answered all the questions.
Oh, yes, sir.
Thank you so much for
All right,
giving us
we'll
your-
see you now. Enjoy the rain.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome. You need to take some to the guys over there at the station? Oh, he's been here a while. Yeah, that's Cotter.
Actually,
Joe, how's your little boss man doing? Joe.
He needs a napkin though.
Hey, good cake.
It is.
Where'd it come from?
Lucy's. Lucy's. Lucy's.
Juice. Loose.
Lucy's.
Loose.
I switch out. Last year we had.
Hey, it really isn't that good. I like yours better. I know we are, because I think you did it. That's why I said that.
that's why he said that Hayden's thought like yours better.
I switch out.
Okay.
He's being loyal to Hades.
That's the new logo on it. I switched it to the new logo.
Nice.
I said, you guys, somebody watching, they said, you did something.
Good cake. Oh yeah, I think that was Deborah.
What's that?
said that he fell asleep during a council meeting?
Did I fall asleep? I have an executive session.
Oh, what's the thing?
Were you asleep? It's because when you're asleep, you're not thinking.
Oh.
And I was sitting there all over. Spider walked up and he goes to the camera so early. You know, I don't know what was going on. It was a long night.
I think of the few of those midnight ones that we did, we were keeping each other awake.
Well, you get tired, and especially when you sit still. Sugar you up and
It's
send you
not
home.
there.
Kids.
They don't know where it went. I almost picked it up. I shouldn't throw it on
Oh,
the
heck. Yeah, I know. That's what we're like. Oh, thank you.
I almost threw mine on the floor.
Thank you, sir.
I do appreciate it.
Deborah, thanks for spiking the punch. That was good.
Anytime.
Just joking.
Those other duties in my job description. Be careful of that ginger ale, it might get you.
Yeah.
All right, we ready?
Let's get the rest of this done.
Where's your movie?
All right, we're going to reconvene at 6:57.
5:57.
I'm gonna say.
5:57?
I'm like, oh my lord.
It hasn't been a long day, I promise. No, we're going to wait an hour. No, 5:57.
He just doesn't do analog clocks, that's all.
I do analog clocks. Sometimes. All right, next item is recognition of artist of the winning 2023 Poppy poster. That we have Arnie DeLazzi.
A different hat this time is President of Castroville Area Economic Development Council. We've been giving the winning, grand prize winning poster now for 8 years from the Poppy Poster Contest. It was started 8 years ago by Pat Marientz, and as something just to do as a festival type thing in town. The first year we did it, we had 10 entrants. It's grown a little bit. This year we had 70.
Wow.
And there were quite a few students from elementary, middle, and high school participated this year. And we give prizes, cash prizes and so forth, since day one in cash to first and second prize winners and grand prize winners. We give out $1,075, and Merwick's Art Supply Store in San Antonio is gracious enough through Pat's connections to give 4 $25 gift certificates to other of the winners. And so what we're going to do tonight is just present the winner of the grand prize of all the posters to you with the artist here to make the presentation. One other comment I should make before we get the winner over here is a lot of that money that I mentioned is $1,075 is gained back by us selling posters. And we have several that are autographed by the winner and a lot of them that are not autographed, and they're available at the chamber and also at Magnolia Filling Station. So if anybody would like to have a poster and purchase one, we'd appreciate it, and we'll just keep rolling ahead to next year and do it again. So anyway, Robert, would you please come up here, and Mr. Mayor, would you please come down here? Some of you probably have seen this, or maybe many of you have seen this, but Robert Blange is from up by the Queehee vicinity, is the winning artist. And this year, this is what the Poppy poster winner is. And I'm gonna give it to him and get out of your picture, Deborah, so they can do it. Okay, but through Robert and his grand prize winning, we are giving the award winning poster to the city of Castroville, and Mayor Schroeder was elected for Robert. And as you can see, there's a lot of them behind the council members, and this is Robert's family that's over here. Made a big trek all the way down to anyway.
How do you spell your last name?
And
His last name? I'm sorry. Sloan?
C-O-L-A-N-G-E.
Got it. Thank you. Awesome.
Congratulations.
We're gonna have, as Lisa, we're gonna have to put them up on the wall.
Yeah.
I do have things to put them up. I just, yes. Probably put them box here. Yes, since we're not having to pull it down.
What's the history of that picture?
That is the picture that they overlooked from the hotel. We had a gentleman one night in the audience that said that that was the land before anything was ever developed. And that's the overlooking from the hotel.
Interesting.
I didn't know until then.
I didn't realize that. That's cool. All right, next item is proclamation recognizing May 21st through May 27th, 2023 is National Public Works Week. And the actual proclamation is connecting the world through public works, whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of Castroville, Texas. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structure and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Castroville to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2023 marks the 63rd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association and Canadian Public Works Association, be it now. Resolved, I, Darren Schroeder, Mayor, and the City Council do hereby designate the week of May 21st through May 27th, 2023 as National Public Works Week. I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and the government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contribution they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. In witness hereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Castroville.
And John's here.
And just to say, you know, this is an official proclamation, but our public works people really do, they keep the city running. John, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for all of the folks that are out there in the hot, in the cold, in the ditches, in the dark, and keeping us in the light. So thank you.
Do you want to give him that, and then I'll take a picture? and then
Absolutely.
It may be the picture.
One more time. Come on up, John.
All right, your turn, John.
The one time you didn't wear a jacket. Like, you always wear a jacket. Yeah. Yeah.
We have an official copy that I'll get over to you.
All right, next item is consent agenda. On the consent agenda, the minutes for April 25th, 2023, regular called city council meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
One abstention, I was not here last meeting.
Thank you. All right, do you have the presentation thing with you?
Oh, I do,
I set up before we did that.
This is what we don't like to do.
What's that?
This is what we don't want to have to do, right?
Yeah.
Exchange stuff.
I need my glasses to see. Ah, there it is. Oh, yeah. This is what happens when you set your laptop on the bumper of your Jeep so that you can put the trash in the trash can and then drive off, forgetting that it was on your bumper. And it falls off in front of Bob Lee's house.
It gets all crystalline on there.
It was beautiful. I'm amazed that it still works, but it does.
Thanks.
Microsoft product.
Yes, it is. All right.
No, that's a thing, but that's good.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The
Yeah.
other thing would be cracked out and not working. Probably just as good.
All right, come on. Here we go.
Sometimes it doesn't extend like it's supposed to, and I just tell it to duplicate, and then it goes on.
No, it just,
There it goes.
PowerPoint. There we go. Okay. So this is the mayor's report for May 9th. We're going to talk about what happened with my thing. I'm not sure. I have no idea. That is so weird. It started recording and playing back.
See, you spoke too soon about your computer.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so we're going to talk about intergovernmental cooperation. We'll talk a little bit about our trip to DC last week. We're going to have acknowledgement of community giving, and then a brief summary of the city council work session that we had today. So I believe that it's very important that we continue to work with other people that influence what we're doing. So last week we met up, so myself, the mayor pro tem, we went, last year I went with Scott to meet up with our federal agencies, our House and Senate members, the people that kind of impact us both through policy, through grants and other funding. So we met up with Department of Transportation. Our top priority right now is dealing with the traffic and dealing with our transportation planning. So we met up with them, had some great outcomes from there. We met up with USDA about some of the funding that they had done already and looking for additional funding possible going forward. Department of Justice, talking to them about the COPS grants, other ways that they can help us. One of the biggest struggles that we have as we grow, the first need that we have is additional cops, additional officers to be able to support the growth. And that need will always come before the revenue comes back from taxes that support that. And so we're looking for some assistance just to bridge some of that gap. We talked to the Veterans Administration. They spent about an hour and a half with us actually running through some of the different programs. We're working on a summary and engaging council members on different elements of this because there are some great services available for our veterans. The next we met with our Small Business Administration. We actually met up with the Veterans Administration portion of the SBA, looking for different things that we're trying to accomplish in terms of supporting our veterans through training, through potentially business incubators, and some other items along there. And then with the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, about doing enhancements for the airport and finding ways to leverage that to better the city. We also met up with our House members. So Tony Gonzalez is our representative in this area, but we also met up with representatives for the areas adjacent to us. The biggest thing that we're talking to them, aside from the support for our veterans, the training, we're working on a training center over at the airport that support both our Medina Valley students and veterans or people that are exiting the military looking for skills and training and potential job and business opportunities. We also talk to them. The biggest thing, again, is transportation. As we're working on, Judge Keith Lutz and I are both on the planning board for the US 90. They're doing a US 90 study, soup to nuts. He and I are both on, I think that he has appointed Mayor McAnally from Hondo as his representative, but we're working on that together to understand how we can deal with the fact that US 90 goes right through town for us, for Hondo, for others, and trying to figure out other ways. And the Department of Transportation had some great ideas, some grants that we're looking at applying for both independently and with the county. So we were talking to them about that, and all of the other representatives that are there were along that same kind of area, and we wanted to make sure that we're garnering support for the things that we're going to be going for. So Tony Gonzalez would be advocating for us. We wanted to make sure that they were aware of it and weren't surprised by it and could give us letters of support in this. And every single one of them saw the need, saw how it related to what they were dealing with in their districts, and had committed to working with us on that. Also with our senators, John Cornyn and Ted Cruz. It was a very, very busy week. I think that we had a lot accomplished. Hopefully we'll come out of this with some good solid planning and potentially some grant opportunities for the coming year. So we'll continue to give updates on that as we go forward. We also meet up with, so we do the federal trip once a year. It's a long trip and it's a lot of stuff happening, so that is an annual thing that we will continue to do as we go forward to make sure that we are coordinating well with the people that represented us at the federal level. We also meet up with the state. It's been regularly. We don't have a policy in place, but we've gotten up there pretty much once a quarter working with state agencies, state legislators through a number of different means. And then also regionally, so I've been working a lot with the Hill Country Alliance. I'm actually on the Hill Country Alliance Leadership Summit, where they bring in once a month. It's county judges and mayors, city council people, and water districts. There's a group of about 24 of us that are meeting up every month, going through some common problems, some common issues that we're dealing with, and finding common solutions. And then local, the county, we have a great relationship with the county. The county supports us really well. This is kind of a unique thing that you don't see in a lot of areas. I've talked to a lot of people that are like, what, the city and the county, you get along? And the commissioners and the judge, you all get along, and we incredibly well together. And I think that part of that is because we approach things at a county level through Go Medina. Go Medina was an economic development that was spun out of the fact that each one of these small cities inside of Medina County had our individual economic development, but it's to bring us all together for joint opportunities. Because if we have something that comes to, say, Hondo, that they can't support because they don't have certain elements, then it can come to Castroville or go to Divine or go to Lacoste or go to any of the other ones. So it's a great coordination there. We do meet up with the schools. I've been over there with their career and technical education. We meet up with Dr. Kalas quite regularly. We leveraged them today. They actually came into, we had a workshop today that they came into. I'll tell you about that in a second. But we do try to keep in tight coordination with them. And then with TxDOT. TxDOT has been a great partner, and I always tease that they say no really well, but they provide us a lot of guidance. They've been very patient with us, trying to get us to understand the best ways that we can advocate for our own future by working through some principles that they've been dealing with for decades, and they are really, truly good community partners. And we have met with TxDOT all the way from our local folks to our regional folks, to our state folks, and then even all the way up to the USDOT. So we're engaged at all levels because right now, again, Highway 90 is, I think, our biggest danger in getting absolutely buried in traffic. All right, so that's kind of a high-level recap of that. I want to talk about community giving. So I want to take a moment to recognize and express my gratitude to the people and groups in our community who generously give of their time, their money, and expertise to make our community a better place. Your dedication and hard work, it really helps make our town a better place to live and to work and to raise a family. This is a special place because of each one of you. I encourage each and every person in this community to consider getting involved in groups like these, or to find a way to give back to your community, whether it's volunteering your time, your effort, donating to a local charity, or simply being kind to your neighbors. I think every little bit helps. So together, I think working together, we just make this a better place to live. So this is an acknowledgement of the people that have done this, and I'm going to miss some people, and I apologize. There are so many people that have been doing this for so long. I joke, but I'm serious, that I moved here and they put me right to work, and that's the way that this community is. So the businesses, the Chamber of Commerce.
You're brave.
I am. And a sucker. So the Chamber of Commerce, we've been partnering really well with them. They've been making great strides to do better to support our local businesses. I mentioned Go Medina before. Go Medina brings us opportunities to bring economic development into Castroville. And the ultimate goal of economic development really is to reduce the tax burden of the individual homeowners. The more that we can leverage our businesses to pay for the taxes and services, the less we have to burden the individual people with. With Go Medina, the ELSAS group. I want to call special attention to this. So the ELSAS group is, you've heard of the Downtown Redevelopment Group. It started off with 35 families that they all put in money. They raised quite a bit of money, and their sole goal was to preserve and protect some of the heritage that we have here. And so they've been buying up some of the buildings. Most of them needed some work. Some of them needed a lot of work. And so they are really dedicated to not losing a single additional building. They pointed out the fact that we had the hotel, what was that called again? Where the Bill Miller's is now.
Oh, the Sunset?
No, it was before that. It was something even better. It was the first swimming pool in Castroville. It was a motel.
Yeah, what they called the Sunset Motel?
It was called something better before that.
No, it wasn't.
But that was the problem. It's sunsetted. So I was talking to somebody that has a business like right kitty corner from there, and he's like, yeah, we used to watch all the nefarious things that happened there, but it's because it started falling into disrepair. And they're like, we don't want to lose another one. And so I know that there's a lot of talk about the city doing all kinds of things to support them, and actually we haven't, but they've done things to support us. It's up to 50 families now. When you look at the best thing that I could ask from every one of you, of us, is that we do something to make our city better. And this is a group of people that have put in a ton of money to help make it better, to improve our community. And when you think about 50 families, that's a whole number percent of the population of Castroville that is doing their part to make it a better place. So I want to thank them and ask them to continue to do good things. And then small business owners. So we have so many. I didn't list them all out. I mean, I look at Shelley and Jerry, now Evan. That was a surprise to me. Congratulations, Evan. Really excited for what he's going to be doing over at Magnolia Coffee Shop. Rhonda over at Rhonda J's creating Fiorella Friday. Laura continuing this. I think that she just got her certificate of occupancy over with the plant shop where Paris Street closed down. We have Castroville Bank, we have Texan Bank, we have Broadway Bank, we have all of these, and I'm going to stop there because that's just everybody around here, and I will miss the wonders of Sammy's and Havy's and Jukes every time they get a chance to volunteer. They volunteer, they donate, they don't just throw money at it necessarily, although they do donate money, they also donate goods. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've had hot dogs from them for 4th of July or for all of these different things. It's amazing how many people give. With boards and commissions. So for the city boards, I don't remember if I have city council in here. I might have to say it twice. The people up here, Harold, thank you again for stepping up. I know that it's a burden for every single one of us to go through this incredibly high-paying job that is sarcasm, but it's a lot of volunteer effort. The amount of time, I think, Heard, with all the time and effort that you spend into reading the agendas and going over and asking questions, I think you're almost a penny an hour now, close to it. I mean, it's very lucrative. That's with the raise. So I want to make sure that I point that out, that these people that are up here that take your calls, that take your concerns, that take sometimes some abuse, they are volunteers here, and I want to thank everybody for stepping up and actually doing this. On the city boards and commissions, planning and zoning, and the Historic Landmark Commission, and the library board, and the Parks and Recreation, who am I missing? Airport, the P&Z, the ZBOA, Zoning Board of Adjustments. Each one of these has a group that sits up here or in their designated spots, and they do things to make the city better. We also have the Friends of the Regional Park, the Friends of the Library, the Friends of the Landmark Inn, the Friends of the Airport. It's not an official nonprofit, but I would love to see them do that, to start raising money to help improve things at the airport. Each one of these, they raise money for the things that they want to see. So they're not just saying, hey, I want you to do this, but they're actually leaning in and doing things to make these things better. With youth sports, if you look, there is so much support in this community for youth sports. With youth soccer, and Clay Binford was actually going to be here today to talk about the new soccer league that he is helping implement and sponsor and really advocate for some actual real competitive stuff over at Lions Park. You've seen us doing a lot of stuff over there. We'll have him in at another council meeting to talk about that. Also with the youth sports over at the regional park. So we grew, I think I've got this number correctly, 2 years ago we were at 400 kids, now we're at 800 kids. Is that sound about right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's incredible, and all of the volunteers that it takes
That's
to make
just,
that
that's
happen.
just soccer.
That's just soccer.
Yeah. Another football brings another 300 or 400, and
And then baseball.
There are multiple seasons. Of course, we have baseball that has over 800. So, yeah.
Yep, and so Medina Valley Youth Baseball Association, the amount of time and effort that people, and money that people have spent out at the ball fields is amazing. I mean, it's been personal wealth that has been reinvested for our kids, which I think is absolutely the right thing to do. With our diving, so the Smiths actually donated the board. They're like, we want to make sure that our granddaughter has what she needs. She's, a spectacular performer, and to bring in Stefanos, a world-class coach that has done some really amazing things with these kids and with others. But this came about because of it was personal donations, it was group coordination, it was a city staff helping accommodate all of that. It took a lot to bring that in. Same thing with swimming. So there's a lot of people here that it's not just as simple as, hey, we're going to do something. It's hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that make this happen. Public service. Okay, there we are. City Council. I will thank you again. And thank you, Councilman Mertz, for taking on this very important thing.
You pronounced it right, and it's still spelled wrong.
Did I spell it wrong?
You pronounced it right.
No, the
Oh.
closed caption.
No, it's that's the auto recording.
Yeah, I know.
The transcript. That was Microsoft that misspelled it.
Okay.
Yeah, blame them. So I've got a couple of other ones on here. So the Scouts, both the boys and the girls of the Scouts, they do so many things in this community, that volunteering for things, being out there. I missed one that I want to call out specifically with Medina Valley ISD. As they came out for their volunteer days, they helped out the chamber, they helped out the park, they helped out the entire city. ROTC is out at the regional park all the time. Helen Delavan does a great job. See, I mentioned her name without her realizing it. Does a great job of enlisting help and coordinating with these kids and really empowering them to make a difference. She does an amazing job in wrangling all of the cats, and these kids are hard workers. I'm just amazed at how they get out there, and they heft the bags and they tote the trash, and they just do a phenomenal job with that. City cleanup days. So Curl, she's one of our code enforcement officers, started this a couple of years ago. She's like, there are people out there that have violations because they can't clean it up. They don't have the physical ability or the financial ability to clean it up. So she instituted these city cleanup days. And so many people have come out there. Ellie's out there every single time without fail. There are people that are from the city of Castroville that go out and volunteer with chainsaws and with trailers and with gloves and clippers and help clean up some of the stuff that other people just don't have the ability to do. So I love the fact that a city employee started up something that brought in the entire community to reach out and help other people. The American Legion Hall, how many things that they do for us, how many services they provide.
American Legion, you mean, the hall is just
American Legion, yes. The hall, the place. The hall itself does a great job, as well as the people of the American Legion. Animal services. Kyle snuck out. So Kyle McVeigh has been working on Nip and Tuck for years now, has raised, I believe it's tens of thousands of dollars. If you think about the citywide yard sale, my mom was asking about that. She's like, who benefits from that? I'm like, the community does, because she's putting all of that money aside to help support animal services. And as she said during citizens' comments, this is something that the city is working with the county to support in that. But she's been out there for years doing this. Petunia's Rescued Friends has worked with the city in helping find people to adopt. Josh has been doing a great job. I've seen him on our other code enforcement animal control officer gets on social media and posts all of the animals that are picked up, either to help find their families or the ones that we're not able to, finding people to adopt, or really finding good places for these animals. And then city events, my gosh. We have so many people that do, not just for events. I mean, we have our garden club of one who does so much for us to get out and make this place better and help out with Steinbach House, with tours, with, can I call you out by name? Please. Priscilla Garrett. Can I call you out by name, Priscilla Garrett? So just the amount of things that you do for the city. Always here for city council. Oh, I got Arnie. No doubt. I'll put him on the spot too. But just the amount of time and effort that you put into the city to make it a better place. I know that we rely on you from the city on working with some of the folks that have come in from France, from the school districts in San Antonio, from the out-of-towners, really making them feel special and doing a phenomenal job with that, and so many other things. I think I've got you guys in here later too, but I'll do it again. So Arnie DeLassy, I'll tell you again, he's the actual mayor. I'm the elected mayor. And I say this, Artie was, I think you were actually the first person that we met here over at the Steinbach House when my wife and I first came here to look. And he, like, I swear we weren't even here and he's already getting me to volunteer for things. But he's involved with everything from 4th of July. He started up the Castroville Area Economic Development Corporation. He's down, if you ever want to really know what's going on in the city, go over to Magnolia at 7 o'clock in the morning, and he is faithfully always there, unless he's taking care of scouts, which he does as well. With the tour to Castroville, with so many different things, Arnie really exemplifies what it means to be a true volunteer in the community. Not only that, he works with other people to help bring everybody together. Just does an amazing job, and it doesn't happen without people. Like I hear in so many. I'm taking a lot of time with this because I really want to acknowledge how many people it takes to make a city like this really, really special. Churches and nonprofits. So church activities, you think about St. Louis Day, has been going on for over 100 years. And I still love this. My favorite one, Weston Rips was talking about his dad, who has been making tea for St. Louis Day for 50 plus years now. And all of these different volunteers, you have no idea how many people it takes. Laura Reed had me out there washing dishes last year. Not last year, she skipped me. She gave me a break last year, the year before. I'm out there, and they have so many dishes to wash and so many people. There were dozens of people out there just cleaning up the big pots and pans, and it takes so many people to put these events on. And a lot of communities, you have the same 5 people that are volunteering for everything. And we have that here too, but we have 5 people here and 5 people there and 50 people there and 70 people there, and it's just amazing how many people it takes to do this. So there you go. I had Castroville Special Events. So that's, Arnie is a part of that, but it's also the other folks that are finding ways to raise money for the city, to do better things for the city. If you look at Lions Park, when are we going to have the trees in there?
Before the middle of June.
Before the middle of June, right before they fry solid of heat and drought.
Don't use the D word.
Don't use it. I didn't use. It's raining. We're turning a new leaf this year. So through these kind of volunteer efforts, you're going to see Lions Park gets better and better. It sat really kind of neglected for years, and we have people like I mentioned before, with Clay Benford, with Arnie's help in getting the trees in there, with all of the different community efforts to make that happen. Meals on Wheels. By the way, Meals on Wheels can use some help if anybody wants to help out with that. I got a call from former Mayor Green, who's on the board, and they definitely need some financial help, some additional assistance. They're trying to get some new technology, so if anybody wants to help out with that financially or physically, if you've got time to get out there and help them out, they could really use that. They do a great service for our community. I can't forget historic preservation. See, the list goes on and on. It's amazing to me. So we have, and I know I've probably missed about 10 of the preservation things, Castroville Conservation Society, and I don't want to call any individuals out because they've been doing such a great job for so long. Martha Ortiz has been the president for the last year, and she has done so much, helping us through the Journey series, doing so many different things to preserve the heritage of Castroville. The Castro Colonies Heritage Association has done, so the Beery House, the Living History Center, so many different efforts to do that. Thank you, Phil, for your involvement with that. Medina County Historic Commission. There are so many people that really care so much about maintaining what has been given to us and making sure that we're protecting that and appreciating that. And then just individual acts of service. So thank you again to everybody that gives so much to our community. Your efforts don't go unnoticed. Know that we see this, we appreciate this, and I want us to come together as a community and work toward building a better future for ourselves and our children. And I feel like we really have the power to make a real difference in our town. But it takes hard work and dedication, and just get out there. Please, I ask you to do that. So here's my challenge. Each and every one of you to get involved with the community. I really, with all of the people that are going to be moving in, I really want to get the volunteer packets together and to welcome them to Castroville and ask them where they want to volunteer and put them to work, because that's one of the things that makes this a great place. It is because of the community. It's because of each and every one of you. And whether it's volunteering at a local charity, supporting our schools, joining a neighborhood association, there's so many different ways to make an impact. So I want to roll up our sleeves together. Let's continue to get to work and make it a great place. Council workshop. So I had mentioned this before. We had a council workshop today. Actually, I'm going to go back. Did I miss anything that needs to be called out in terms of volunteer effort? I know I missed so much, and I covered so much. Is there anything that I specifically missed that I would be remiss in not mentioning? Okay. So at our council workshop today, this was specifically a council workshop. We were working on refining. There was a lot of work that went into the first development agreement that we did. It took, how long did that take to put together? That was 2.5 years they spent on working through these. And so what we're trying to do is take that initial effort and build upon it, and to refine what we're doing, to make sure that what we're asking for is actually what we want to receive. What we're asking for, we keep talking about growing as Castroville and not growing as San Antonio. Love San Antonio, don't want to be San Antonio. We don't want to grow as California. We don't want to grow as New York. We don't want to grow as anywhere USA. We want to grow as Castroville. And so we're putting a lot of effort into defining what that looks like, understanding what it looks like, defining what that looks like. And that's a lot of what today's workshop was about, is how do you actually do that? So we invited people in. So Matt Lewis and Simple City Design, they are a city planning organization that we had approved a work order to have them come in and do this. They're also doing a DNA study to take some of the things that we can point out and say, these are really cool things about Castroville. If you look at the historic building guidelines, it's a great effort in putting this together. They did a great job in defining the built environment, and these guys are going to go to another level and describe it at a city level to make sure that we say, hey, this is what we've already got, this is what we want to continue to have. So they facilitated this. Matt did a great job. He's also done work for Bastrop, and they're just finishing up Taylor, San Marcos, Austin. Austin was a brief stint as an employee, but he got over that and did even better.
3 years.
Yeah.
3.5 years.
But did some great things in each place, and it's really about making the community whole, the way that it wants to grow. We also had Chief Cook. I think that he stuck around because, he was already here, and he was out here to talk about how do we deal with, we had actually a few different people talking about dealing with traffic, dealing with buses and emergency services. So he was talking to us about what do our traffic patterns and our street patterns and our development patterns need to look like from an emergency services. We had, from the school district, we had Dr. Kalos and Toby Kennedy, who's the transportation director, to talk to us about how do we take care of the kids, what is the walking distance that we need to make sure that we have accommodated in new developments, proximity to elementary schools, how do we deal with it from a school standpoint. We had TxDOT out in force, so this is what I talked about before. TxDOT has done a great job in partnering with us. They pointed out a couple of things that we had missed and during that conversation, but those are planning efforts that we are engaging to try and accomplish in terms of what do each one of the street types look like so that we can accommodate the growth that's happening and minimize the impact on the city. We also had developers. We had representation from most of our developers. I think actually all of our developers had representation there, so they could understand as we go through this process, what does it look like for council, what are some of the decisions, so that they can understand that a little bit better. And thank you for showing up even again. You've been here for all the cool stuff. And then we had a couple of citizens that came in and just kind of walking through the same ones that are here all the time to help us stay connected and understand this. So it's a great challenge. We're going to take this together and continue to move on this. And we've got a couple of items on the agenda for today that do some more work to that direction. So ultimately, we know that we can't stop the growth, and you can't always control it, but you can inspire people to do things better by giving them clear direction. And we don't want anybody that wants to come in and do something in Castroville, that wants to do something good. We want to make sure that we encourage that, keep people from doing bad things, negative things that negatively impact the community. So it's a big, huge effort. We're spending a ton of time doing it. So thank you, everybody, for going through all of that. Okay, so now that I've doubled the length of our council meeting.
Thank you for all.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I appreciate what everybody is doing here. I mean, it takes so much to make this thing go.
I was going to say you're worried that the possibility is you will forget somebody. Because they'll let you know tomorrow.
They will, yes. They'll let me know tonight. I think I may have gotten text while I was saying that.
Yeah.
All right, next we have, and I apologize for doubling up on the city administrator's report. We normally trade off half and half. I wanted to do this presentation last week, but I wasn't ready because I didn't have everybody together, so I doubled up and made
Now I understand why you said you weren't ready.
I wasn't ready.
It's a long list.
It's a long list,
Yes.
right. I started putting it together and like, there is no way I can get this done in time, so. All right, so for the city administrator's report, we have, I don't need to read off the individual items,
No.
right? Okay,
No, you
all
don't.
right. Is there anything, Scott, that you wanted to go over specifically?
I think you use up all my time, sir.
I
don't.
For the next several months.
Yeah, I don't need the clicker or anything, so you can't be there.
Well, I've got one question.
Yeah, I was say, let me open up the questions, and then I do have one comment at the end. But
So, on the City Hall remodel update,
yep.
you included a thing from the Texas Historical Commission in here.
Yes.
There was a statement in there that caught my eye
Yes.
regarding the architectural staff determined there's no historical designation on this property.
Yes.
So,
I don't know how they came to that conclusion, and on the one hand, yeah, I'm relieved they're just going to let us do what we want to do. On the other hand, we are following up on that. I've asked Brianna to follow up with THC to say, hey, wait a minute, because I know, like, for instance, the windows,
Right.
they put us under specific guidelines on, so the city received a grant to replace all our windows like 14 years ago, I think, and then we had them repaired, and then more recently than that, we had them repaired.
right.
And both times it was with this grant, and because of that grant, we were kind of told, you shall not mess with the envelope of the building. So I don't know, So we're
Okay.
going to follow up on that.
I know they've done, THC in Austin has done a follow-up visit here to see about 2 or 3 years ago to make sure that we were staying in conformance to that earlier document. So there's a document out there that they expect us.
Well, the latest news, the very latest news on like the remodel is, we were walking down the hall, and although we've remember the kind of, this was intended to be done in phases, and the first phase was to secure the envelope of the building to make sure that we were taking care of any leaks. Well, the notorious places where we had leaks, we have leaks there again. So I'm going to reach out to the contractor and just, we're still under warranty. He'll come out and fix it, but it is frustrating because this old building just has a lot of challenges.
Okay,
Just
thank you.
shows the need. Yeah, good catch. We had the same concern. That's actually why I shared the letter with you all, because we were as surprised as you are to see that they just said, sure, do whatever you want. Oh, no. What? Who's that?
That's her.
What? Yeah. So if you'd like me to speak to any of the items, I'm certainly happy to. These are, we're working on the needs analysis for our IT system. The ultimate goal of that is to prepare an RFP. That's still, I believe we're still on time to have that done sometime in June, so that would come forward in June. Let me scroll back up so I can look at my list. The remodel we talked about, the remodel does propose basically adding an extension to the back of the building that would be 2 stories. This would help us to meet fire code. There are some limitations to what we can do upstairs, but the interior of the building would be remodeled, would be changed a little bit. Obviously, there are very thick, big walls. We're not moving those, but we would expand where the bathrooms are presently, and there's a storage closet. That would all be expanded to be made a large break room and work area for staff. And then the offices themselves would get a refresh to be a little more accommodating. The lighting would change, the ceilings would change. Like, there's general improvements to take care of this building. The downtown master plan that is budgeted for in the CIP, and we are reaching out to various engineering firms. Should be bringing something to the council for your consideration within the next couple of months. Part of this, the timing of this is partly just to make sure we don't stack ourselves up too closely. We've got the DNA analysis going on right now. You saw us just do this development agreement. You participated in that workshop. And then tonight, we're going to talk about a UDO. We intend to bring that back, if you're ready, at the next meeting with an RFP. So again, we're just trying to be measured in our approach to doing these things, which is really the only reason for the delay in the master plan. The balanced scorecard, we're going to hear about tonight. That's on the agenda. Thoroughfare planning, the mayor touched on. I just want to kind of make sure the council is aware that it's going slow, but it is progressing. I'm very, very appreciative and impressed with Keith Lutz and his team, with Westwood Partners and the others, and their efforts to work on this thoroughfare planning they're doing for the county. They're making significant strides, and they're talking about spending quite a bit of money to do an alternate route, because as you heard TxDOT talk about today, they'd have to go out and get all those land rights, and they're expecting that to be tens of millions of dollars. The ultimate bond that they would have to go look for. So they know the cost, and but they also understand, they understand the cash cost of doing it, but they also understand the cost of not doing it. And so they're taking it very seriously, and I'm impressed by his leadership. And then Transportation Alternatives Grant, that's the bridge project. You all approved that with Quiddity. And I just wanted to mention that's moving forward. The bridge would be a replica type bridge that would be in the place where the old bridge was between Landmark Inn and Steinbach. And so it's a really exciting project. I frankly was surprised that it receives as much attention as it did. TxDOT's really excited about it. Landmark Inn is excited about it. So we have a really, really good shot of getting this thing funded, and it is paid for. The vast majority of it is paid for with federal and TxDOT funds. So really, really excited about that project. That's moving forward. It's due in June. So they'll be back, I believe, at the next meeting in May to do a presentation on our basically next level engineering that's being done right now. You have to do you did a feasibility analysis, now we're taking that one step further and putting some engineering around it to make sure that what's being proposed is realistic and that our costs are accurate. The other thing I was going to mention is this weekend, and you're thanking people for their contributions. Respec Engineering has sponsored a suite at the at the Missions Baseball Park. We are extending invitations to a select group of people to be in there. There's a limited number of seats. In addition to that, the city has purchased tickets for our staff, so we've opened it up to the staff. I should get our total numbers back today. Because it's Mother's Day, Sunday is Mother's Day, we have we've extended it to staff and their immediate family. We want this to be a big event. This is Cashville Day at the park. It's the second annual. We did not pick the day. I know a lot of people ask, why on earth did you do some Mother's Day? And I'm not throwing you under the bus, but we followed the elementary school. Remember, they sang, and someone chose this day to go and sing and perform, and that's kind of what establishes the Castroville Day. So we followed them, and we are going to have a good old time. So council, please let me know if you're able to attend. We recognize that there may be a rain out. That's very possible. I will let you know what the plans are if the game gets rained out, and kind of how things will unfold after that. But right now, we're planning on having the game. It's at 1:05, so it's an afternoon game. Plenty of time to come back and have a traditional Mother's Day dinner with your family if you want to do that. But the invitation is extended to all of Castroville. There is a QR code that I can get you that is on an invitation flyer that has been shared with our Chamber of Commerce. If you go to Chamber of Commerce, you'll find it there. But it's going to be a good time. So please, council, let me know if you're interested in coming. We'll make sure you have seats. Again, staff will be there, and we're also going to extend the invitation to all of our boards and commissions. So any board and commission members appointed, it'll be somewhat short notice, but they're all going to be invited to come as well.
And if anybody else wants to go to this, where do they get tickets for it, for the Castroville night on Sunday?
So I think they can go to the chamber website. I'll confirm that here in a minute. I know that we have shared out the QR code at the last chamber luncheon. I just don't know if it made it on the website yet. But I know you can go to the Missions Baseball and just type in it's this Sunday, and you can get tickets to them. They've reserved 100 through Castroville, but I don't have a special link.
Okay,
and
great.
if I do, it'd be
I'm still trying to convince my wife and my mother that this is something I can do to honor them, is to take them to a baseball game. I'm working on them.
So my parents are coming in town, my in-laws are coming in town, my daughter has an orchestral performance that night, so we have it's going to be a very busy day in the Dixon household.
Yes.
But we're going to the game. At least someone's going to the game. I'll be at the game.
Man,
I think some of my girls will be at
setting
the
the
game.
bar high, man.
Yeah, well, frankly, I think my wife's favorite thing to celebrate Mother's Day is kick me out of the house. So
You realize
that's
she
probably not
can't
bad
hear
thing. If she were listening.
She's probably one of these people.
Yes, possibly. Got it. All right. That's all I have.
All right, great. Any other questions about that? All right, so the next item is discussion and take appropriate action on approving Respect Task Order number 19 for water needs analysis.
So I don't have someone here from Respect to present, right? Yeah. This is in answer to the council's concerns. You may recall they were presenting on another matter, and you mentioned that we'd really like staff to investigate and give us some direction on, where we are with our water policies, et cetera. I think this was on the heels of the master water and sewer plan. And so you'll see a little bit further down in the task order, the scope of services and what all they're going to do. And so part of this, the reason presenting this to you, this is within the amount that I could have approved, but I felt it appropriate to present it to you for your approval, because I wanted to make sure that there was alignment on the scope and what they're going to try and do. Now, one of the things that I know Councilman Dyer had expressed interest in was in having looking at alternate water provision options. And they did say that to do that in this scope and fee it would be too expensive. And so staff is going to work with Sarah and some of the other, mainly I think Sarah, to see what options might exist. And that's a phone call and email and discussion. So we'll be chasing those leads down. The other option, and this is just kind of looking at worst case scenarios, truly probably the most feasible option for the city if we really got serious about and concerned about water consumption and what would happen in a level 5 drought or in a contamination issue with the Edwards Aquifer or something along those lines. One of the options that we would have available is, and probably the most, again, the easiest to implement, and honestly probably the least expensive, although it'd still be hellaciously expensive, is to make improvements to our own wastewater treatment plant to make the water that comes out of the plant potable. And that's, there are plants all over the United States that have done that. Basically, they take their effluent and they treat it to a level where it becomes pure enough to drink. It's drinking water again. And they put it back into the drinking water system. It doesn't sound very appetizing, but it is certainly something that other cities have done. But the cost of doing that, obviously, the level of treatment, et cetera, the amount of space it would need. But as far as looking at alternatives, really and truly, there's just not a lot out there. I mean, other than miles and miles and miles and miles of pipe from somewhere, from some surface level that's not the Edwards Aquifer, if you're really looking at like a redundant supply, or building your own aquifer, there's the options are fairly limited, and they're very, very expensive. Or you could build your own surface lake, right? But how big would that be, where it would be, and what would be the cost? Generally, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. A plant upgrade is in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 5 million to 10 million. I mean, it's more in the realm of, we could actually probably accomplish that and afford to do it at some point. Yes, sir.
We had a presentation from Bear Met, from Solace, right after they acquired Bear Met.
Saws?
That's San Antonio Water.
Yeah.
And they had acquired Bear Met because Bear Met was, part of their water was coming out of Medina Lake that they were cleaning up.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, that's what we'd be doing. We'd be taking the water out of the river, that we just put the water in and clean it up. But SAW said they couldn't even use that because you can't mix two different waters like that in a single system.
Yeah.
So your idea, although it sounds good about, probably from a technical standpoint, I'm not sure we could actually do that.
Well,
We're a separate system.
Understood. What we were thinking about was, what do we do in a worst-case scenario?
Yeah.
I mean, when the other alternative is you don't have water, what do we do? And I think that was kind of Herb's hypothesis is, how do we address these issues and what things exist? And when you start throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. But you're right, like to have a distribution system that have both, you'd have to either have enough effluent to supply the whole city, and that's what you use as your main supply, or in an emergency situation, you'd have tanks, you'd have trucks, you'd have some way of dispersing that would not be your, people turning on their faucet in their house, but it'd be a way to get them water in a desperate situation where they needed it. So that was kind of the thought process.
Good thought.
Yeah. So really, I'm looking for feedback and a head nod on the scope as you read through it. I don't think I got there quite yet.
And those task items.
Yeah, so it's on the page number. It's on page C1.
Yeah, right after the yellow one.
And there's 6 tasks that are outlined.
The one thing that I had mentioned to you about this in response to that was really making sure that we've got something that demonstrates where we are currently, like specifically on water
Yeah, we talked
policy.
about a graph that
Yeah.
would show, here's where your current pumping rights are, and I did share that back with them. That's an easy thing to put together, but it was, here's where we are in pumping rights currently, here's how much you are pumping on average, and do that like annually, as far back as we can go, and then here's what your drought-restricted pumpage rights are, and do that in the different stages, and so visually, you'd be able to see that and understand that, and that's one of the things the mayor requested, and that'll be taken care of as part of the report.
And the other thing that, as we go forward, I think that one of the things, as we start talking specifically about the balanced scorecard, one of those items, as we go, not in the initial iteration, but in the subsequent, I think one of the things that we need to identify is how much are we pumping, how much are we selling, which shows us how much we're losing. Because if we're losing 50% and we're judging based on what we're pumping, then what we're providing to the citizens.
Please don't say those numbers out loud. 50%, we're nowhere near, water loss at the most is somewhere a little north of 10%.
Sorry, I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
I didn't want anybody thinking that we were actually losing that much water. We do have system breaks, et cetera, but our water loss is not, there are places on the eastern side of the United States where they pump water for miles and miles, and they actually do lose 50%, and it's not, their consumption is way bigger than ours, so it's really kind of scary. But no, we're down. I think we were just north of 10% when we did our last water audit. And just so you know, TCEQ requires that. So for us to be able to provide that data as part of a balanced scorecard would not be extra work. It's something we have to do on the annual basis anyway to TCEQ. So water loss audits and reports, we already have that data. So yes.
So part of that is defining that, because we haven't seen that, and that's one of the things that, as we move forward, I think that's something helpful for us to see and understand as we set policy. So that's just a great example of that.
Paul are you thinking hard or?
I was just thinking that as much as we know about the efficiency/inefficiency of some of our meters, we might just have more of a meter disparity than a true water loss.
Well, and if you don't, you may not recall, but in your, on Teams, I did make it available after I received a couple of questions about the AMI project, because we did this presentation, but then I don't know that y'all had access to it. So you do now have access to it. It is on Teams. But part of that AMI presentation, we have a contract with them. They are contractually obligated over a 20-year period to prove up that they recover a certain amount of our loss. Because you're absolutely right, Councilman Carey, that there is a certain amount of that that's going through our meters. We have over 50% of our meters that are over 50 years old. Well, they're not measuring accurately. So I know that there is some valid concern about when we put these new meters in, is my bill going to go up? And the way those concerns were couched was, you're going to raise my rates to pay for the program. But that's not true. What's going to happen, however, the program pays for itself just by recouping and measuring accurately the water that's going through that meter. So you're absolutely right about that. And they estimated the amount of loss, and I'm trying to remember what that is. I don't know that, I don't want to put John on the spot, I don't remember either, but I want to say it was in the 4 to 6% range. So like I said, our loss is somewhere just a little north of 10%. I want to say it's between 11 and 14, but I don't think it's as high as 14. I think it's around 11%. And 4 to 6% of that is our system.
Yeah.
Just the meter's not measuring accurately. And the amount of money that adds up to on an annual basis is significant. It's enough to pay for, over a 20-year period, a $2.7 million retrofit of not just our water meters, but water. So the water is helping pay the bill for all of that.
Last year, when we were discussing this, I decided to start watching my bill and realized that I was being billed zero. And I turned myself in for a new meter.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, I don't know, my meter was at least 20 years old, probably easily over 30 years old, and I'm sure there's a bunch of those out there that are reading nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing at all.
Very, very low consumptions. So these will be a lot more accurate. Yeah, we do have new water, speaking of water bills, we do have new water bills. If you got your bill recently, you'll see that there's a new graph on it. That's all through Encode. It didn't cost us any money to do that. That's a program they offered for free, so we upgraded to it. That is not, AMI is going to take that and put it on steroids.
Bring it back to the agenda.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great information, but I think that the motion, if you want to make it, would be to approve task order 19 for respec engineering not to exceed $21,200 to study our current water situation and provide analysis or evaluation to make recommendations against that policy.
Motion made as read.
I'd have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Any discussion, further discussion on that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. Okay. Next item, I'm going to read this item and then I'm going to read a letter about it. So discussion and appropriate action on approving a K-Freeze task order for preliminary engineering for Algiers Street bar ditch improvements in an amount not to exceed $81,525. And I actually meant to read this earlier. This was from Helen Delavan, who has been impacted, her and her neighbors have been impacted by this area for years. Herb, did you want to read this or do you want me to?
You go ahead.
Okay. So she said, not that you need one, but this is just a reminder of our neighborhood's longstanding interest in this agenda item. For decades, it's been called to City Council's attention, but to no avail. It has always been about money. This evening, I have a suggestion, one I've put forth before, and do so again because I believe it to be relatively inexpensive and worth trying. Cut down the intersections of Athens and Algiers at Gentiles. Even 6 to 12 inches would help get the water to the river faster. Try it and see what happens. It is not the big fix, but it will not cost as much and it might just help. In the interim, begin work to redirect and better divide the flow of stormwater that now cuts across all properties from Highway 90 down. Sent half to Athens, half to Algiers. This will involve cleaning out and or creating some bar ditches. As I trust everyone knows, Athens used to have a V down the middle that kept the stormwater from going over into Florence and Lisbon. Now that V resembles an S. Also, the Athens roadbed is now higher than it used to be. Thanks to the number of overlays in the last 2 decades, this has not helped. Add to the above the number of new builds in this area that have been approved for construction without regard to the stormwater impact on others. That has not helped either. I'm not able to attend the meeting this evening, but I'll be watching it with hope in my heart. Thanks, Helen. So I just wanted to make sure that she got that heard. Again, I wanted to do that at the beginning, and I neglected that. So, Scott, on the order.
So for this item, Mike Persine is here to address concerns or questions you may have. I do want to mention that K-Freeze has now merged with Lochner. If you know of Lochner & Associates, they are a national firm. As I told Michael, I'm thrilled for he and the other partners of that firm, but also I think this is a true win for the city, not because K-Freeze was subpar at any level, but because any time you can have a strong relationship with somebody and it gets even better because they add more people and more staff and more expertise, that's just a win-win. And it's not costing us any more to have access to those expertise. So I'm very, very excited. Lochner, if you didn't know, I've dealt with them mainly through their aviation group. KSA has done our planning pieces, but in my experience, I've dealt with Lochner as the group that does the project. So right now, for instance, TxDOT Aviation is utilizing Lochner to oversee and engineer all of the airport improvements that are being funded through grants and other projects throughout the state. So that's how I know of Lochner, and they've always done a very good job, and it's been a good relationship. So I think they're going to be very additive to the equation. And like I said, congratulations, and look forward to working on other projects possibly out at the airport and other places. So We've had a lot of discussion about this. I don't want to put words in Michael's mouth, but, I know that we had a discussion with staff. This is a study that would be conducted. The price is on the agenda. About half of that is survey work. And the intent is to survey, we expanded it to 6 blocks?
It's, the typo in there, it's about 16 is what it amounts to.
Oh, 16?
4 blocks north of Lafayette, and then like 1 block west to Athens, 1 block east of Constantinople.
Yeah, so that whole area would be surveyed to get a lot, and part of the survey work is really to get a better understanding of the amount of effort that would be required. As we started talking staff about bar ditches seem like a very simple approach, especially for non-engineers. Because I'm like, just dig a ditch on the side of the road. How hard is that? We can do that. But it's engineers that think about the details and look at things like, okay, but how many mailboxes are going to interfere with that? How many utilities are there? What depth are those utilities at? Do you have any comms, any communication, buried communication? What depth are those at? When you start digging a bar ditch, how wide is it and how deep is it? And if you look at the topography, how deep is it on one end of the street versus on the other end of the street? So part of this effort would be to look at all those things, and then part of the cost of this is intentionally to have the opportunity to do some public presentations. So one of the parts of the scope and fee is that as the engineers come up, make some summary findings on what bar ditches in that area would look like and where they might go, we can have a detailed conversation with the community, especially the community in that area, about what that looks like. What kind of disruption it will be to their, because imagine, like, again, right now, no bar ditch. If on one end it's 18 inches deep, on the other end, to get the proper flow and get the water moving and not create a fish tank in the middle of the road that creates opportunity for mosquitoes, etc., and just sits there until it evaporates, to get that flow, it might be 3.5 feet deep on the other end. So now think about all your driveways crossings, think about all the other issues that might exist and be impacted by that. So the intention of this effort would be to look at those issues and come up with some, one, define what the challenges are, and then come up with some workable solutions, and then present those solutions to the community, and make sure that we're on the right track, that we can do these things. Now, despite all of that effort, one of the things that was made abundantly clear to me is, I think our engineering partners have shared as candidly as they can, the amount of benefit that we will see from these bar ditches is minimal. It's not going to help that much. Like, it's still recall that when we did that drainage master study or master plan, there's a major project that involves culverts and underground conveyance methods to get that rainwater from between the hill all the way down to the river, or between 90 all the way down to the river, and it's millions and millions of dollars, right? I don't remember the total estimate of that Athens Street project, but it was, I don't know, $10 million, $20 million, yeah, it was lots and lots of money for a drainage project. So this is, you can't even really justifiably call it a stopgap, because it's just not going to make that big a difference. That's the belief, and that's what all the models up to this point have kind of shown about bar ditches. But as Michael can also attest, I said we're going to do it anyway, because we've got to do something. And we can't just say, we're going to wait until we have $20 million, because that's not realistic. We need to do something. And perhaps one of the things that's not in the scope is what we've heard over and over, and if you want to speak to this at any time, and again, Michael, don't ever miss an opportunity to talk, but good luck talking over me, is the lowering of these streets, some of the streets in the area. Again, I'm not from here. I don't know what it used to look like 50 years ago. I can't even ask my grandfather what it used to look like, but some of you can. And those are things that we should be listening to and taking into account. However, just again, keep in mind, the way it was 50 years ago or whenever, there's also a tremendous amount of built environment that wasn't there, that's there now. Whether it's houses or farmland that's been covered up or what have you, there have been some changes in that area. maybe not in 50 years, but I think in the,
In 70 years, I guarantee you, it's very different than 70 years ago because there were no streets.
There were streets, they weren't paved.
Yeah, well,
yeah, unpaved,
Thunder Jack tells me about how it was a jungle back there.
Well,
yeah, unpaved, 6 inches lower, that kind of thing. So, Michael, would you like to
Sure. Good
weigh in?
evening, Mayor, Council. Thanks, Scott, for the opportunity. One of the things when we met with Scott and staff was one of the kind of the big eye-opening moments, right? We'd done the Athens analysis a couple years ago. It was $3 or $4 million to try to intercept a lot of that water. And this is, when you talk about, I think, Councilman Kerr, I think you even presented it right at the time. You said, hey, that seems like a good solution to a 25-year event, but what could we do for less money, right? That was something we'd actually tried to look at. And when you do an infrastructure project, you're trying to you have to have some kind of level of service. Like, what are we designing to, right? And what this number is maybe hopefully illustrative of the scale of the problem. We deliberately looked at the intersection of Athens and Lafayette because we had done that prior drainage analysis. Didn't have to redo any math, right? It was very simple to compare. And I looked at if I just took Lafayette, and if I just tried to put, or took Athens, and I would try to put a little simple bardage on each side, maybe, I think I did 6 inches deep, right? I didn't make it real, but again, it's not real wide there, so you can imagine if you're 6 inches deep and 3 feet each side, you're 6-to-1 slopes. That's 16% side slope, right? When you do that, those two ditches on either side of Athens, at the existing slope of Athens right there, they conveyed maybe, I'm going to say 20 CFS, or cubic feet per second. In a particular design storm, the amount of water coming to us is about 180 cubic feet per second. So those two little ditches didn't do a lot in the scale of things. So if you lived out there, a 2-year design storm looks like a 3 or 4 year. You can't see it. It's mathematically different, but you can't visually see it. But the ditch knows when it's out of capacity, right? It has a finite number that it can hold, and then you get more rain than it can hold, and it overflows, and it looks like it does now. And so when you're looking at this analysis, what Scott said was that was really the big point was as you start to try to convey that water downstream, it needs to have some kind of slope on it, and it adds up. The city's in the, I'm going to call it the giant oxbow of the Medina River, right? And so it's very flat. And so if you keep trying to convey even 0.5% or 0.2% slope, which is almost non-existent slope, you get 500 feet and 1,000 feet downstream, and you've cut a hole into the ground, and now you have to put in culverts and that sort of thing. It's all doable. It's not complicated, but it does cost money to build it. And if you wanted to do a project that you should know in advance what you were getting into cost-wise, right? It's one thing to tell someone to go just regrade the ditch, but when you get to the side streets, what are you going to do with the water? Are you going to carry it across the ditch? Are you going to stop right there? The driveways, that sort of thing. That's all the big part of the effort there.
Well, the reason this matters is just think about it. You know, right now we know where which houses flood and how bad and what the rain does. When you start making these improvements, if you don't, I mean, I know that I'm kind of preaching to the choir, y'all understand this, but if you don't plan accordingly and you just dig the ditch and you have this conveyance and you haven't gotten it all the way out, well, what have you done? You just moved the house that was flooding isn't flooding anymore, or maybe they're still flooding, but it's not as bad. And now another house down the road, it's flooding now. Why? Well, because you brought all the water to them, but you didn't convey it quickly enough away from them. And again, the ditch didn't carry that capacity. So I get, but with all that said, I get, my directive was, yeah, but we're doing it. We need to do something. So this is the effort to do something, but to do it wisely and prudently, and with the information that with our eyes wide open, with the community fully aware of what the sacrifices will be and what the impacts will be to their community. But again, like I said, I think maybe we need to look at the roadways. I don't know if we ever took a serious look at lowering, which roads we looked at lowering and by how much.
We did a while, I hate the word a while, last year sometime, we surveyed Algiers, some spot shots on intersections, and we saw that there was mildly, the intersections might be slightly higher than the roadway coming to it, but it's slightly, again, if you have this much water, the intersection is this much higher, right? So it's not really, in the scale of things, it's not really stopping the flow of water downstream. Maybe after the storm is over, you're left with a few inches of water ponding, but that's not really what's keeping the capacity of that street down. And just as part of this exercise that we were talking with Devin and Scott about was, I looked at Athens Street, and if I just said, what if I just dropped Athens? I made it into a channel, like it used to be an old stream bed, I just made it a stream bed again. It can no longer function safely as a street. It would even at 18 inches of water, is moving almost 10 feet per second, which is enough to take any car you own and send it down the creek like a rocket ship, right? And so
You'd
you
have to
did,
close it off like Constantinople.
right, you have to do some low water, you could do these things, right? None of this is, again, not complicated, just decisions, what impacts, and if you cut a street down, there are sewer services, water services, gas services, again, it just depends. Well, it's one thing to just like planning level, I think, versus I want to put a real dollar value to this and make sure I'm not surprised halfway through the process on what it will actually cost.
They did do that 25 years ago. They turned it into a swale. It used to be a crown road, they turned it into a swale. And it moves water, I mean, to a certain degree. I remember former Mayor Hancock talking about pulling out of his driveway one day and having the back end of his truck start moving toward the river.
Yeah.
So you know, we can't run it on the surface anymore, but not down Athens Street. So
You could, but maybe it's no longer a through road. Maybe and you put culverts at the cross streets. Right? These are all things that can be done, but
You'd have to.
the community would have to make a decision
You'd have
about
to
it.
close it. It would not be, it would function as a stream,
or go underground.
not as a road.
Yeah.
Or you gave a pessimistic beginning discussion on that.
I'm trying to be realistic and candid.
But in reality, you say about half this cost is going to be the survey, and whatever we do in the future, we're going to have to survey this, right?
Right.
So even if this gave us no benefit, that's a benefit on its own,
Sure.
$40,000 benefit.
I also noticed that there was no underground utility locations in this survey.
Right, so this is still like a preliminary, so kind of high-level planning. So we're going to work with the city force to mark out city-owned utilities. We'll call 811, one call and get like CPS gas and the telecom to mark those out so we have a general idea. We're not going to do any potholing of those because we could do it, but it's a lot more investment in money. It's very expensive to do it, and it would add up quickly. At this stage, we think we're going to say, okay, based on the sewer, we have a general idea what the sewer laterals are. Water services, we have a general idea of the assumed water service steps. So part of what our exercise would be, it says, okay, if we're cutting, let's say, down to 12 inches or something, okay, we should be good here. If we're cutting 2 feet, we think water services and gas services are going to get impacted. They've got to be relocated or relayed. And then telecom is always shallow, right? So if we're digging anything, we expect to, now usually the telecom companies have to pay for that relocation, but also because they're paying for it, they do it when they're ready, right?
John, do we still have a hydro trencher? Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
So that's one problem, that was good. So it's not as pessimistic as you, or realistic as you, in the fact that, I guess, when I was looking at $80,000, it's a lot of money if you got no benefit. But the fact that this is gonna have to be done.
I'm not pessimistic about the project. I think the scope is reasonable. I think the price is reasonable. I think, to your point, we'll have some survey data that, if nothing else, that survey data may serve us down the road. But I just want to be very, very candid about what the expected outcomes will be and what the challenges are, and that we're paying some amount of money that is really just kind of preliminary. I mean, there's additional study that has to be done to actually do the project. For what will be not a lot of benefit, because we already know that. Before we even start, we already know that bar ditches in this area are going to have a limited amount of conveyance that they're going to be able to take.
And I agree that there will be some benefit, this is not gonna cure the problem. It's
Right.
not gonna get close to curing the problem. But also, I remember your study, one of the recommendations of your earlier year study was is you need to improve the bar ditches in the short term. So I think the bar ditches are important to open.
Yeah, at these places, there aren't any. That's part of the issues. You know, there are places where we can improve and maintain, and we are trying to maintain as best we can, especially in that area, those major bar ditches that are functioning. But this area, this is about establishing new ones. I think Councilman Dyer had a comment.
Councilman Dyer? Harold, you got anything?
No, I don't. Yeah, I'd just like to say, this is not going to do anything except study what we've been studying for the last 20 years, multiple times. It's going to give us more current, good information. I think on your drawing, it doesn't talk much about Lafayette Street, and I think that's where the problem is most acute, because when the water comes
and it comes down to the intersection of Lafayette and Athens Street, it's not going down Lafayette Street so that it can go down to the river on Algiers and Constantinople. It's not doing that because there's no bar ditches on Lafayette Street. Yet you don't have a red line on Lafayette Street. It's going to need bar ditches to move the water eastward. I agree that a bar ditch on Athens Street isn't going to do much, but 2 bar ditches on Athens Street and 2 bar ditches on Algiers Street and 2 bar ditches on Constantinople Street will move a lot of water if we can distribute it across those 3 streets like it used to be. So although I don't want to set expectations too high because this is a study, it's not going to result in any new trenches. We're going to get a new project with a new bill, and maybe we'll be able to start putting in bar ditches in the next phase, which I hope we will, because I think if we're going to sit around and wait for somebody to bring us $4 million to do the Athens drainage project, we're going to be waiting a long time because nobody's going to bring us $4 million and say, go do this project. So I think we have to do something on our own, and I think this is a good start, and I fully support this task force.
Thank you, Councilman Dyer. As a clarification, we are going to, there's not a red line in that survey exhibit because Lafayette was already surveyed as part of the water main replacement. So we'll do the analysis to include it. We didn't need to survey it twice.
So when you're surveying down Athens, I mean, if we do something substantial to Athens, there's a house that's down. So are you doing the survey of that, or are you just providing the amount of water that's coming out? I'm just wondering what it's going to do to houses down Athens.
So survey, like you were talking topographic survey or our analysis efforts?
Either one. So you're doing the topographic survey on the red lines, right?
Yes, okay. So the topographic survey would be within the apparent right-of-way, right? Just what you eyeball as a right-of-way. We're not doing a bunch of boundary survey to establish property corners and nail it down. If they find one, they'll pick it up and that'll help us, but that's not really the exercise. It's just we want to know generally what do we have to work with. The logical place to discharge is down the end of Athens, the end of Algiers, right? And so that's why the survey extends a little further. There's a natural grade break in Algiers where we think we might need to daylight this if we were to take it. One of the things you look at when these ditch analysis is like, City of San Antonio TxDOT, their minimum longitudinal or running slope for a grass ditch is 1%. If you run 1% in Castroville, you'll have a 20-foot deep hole real quick, right? Because it's very long and very flat natural topo. So we're looking at some much flatter slope, but even then, over 1,000 feet or 500 feet, you will dig a hole, and so we need a place to daylight that slope, and that's where it kind of continues downstream. One of the things we would be doing is, I think, is we're kind of looking at 2 options. That's our ideas. The idea would not to go, just to kind of contain it within the public right-of-way, unless there was some reason that we said, hey, look, we think there's a benefit to you guys. If you were to pick up a drainage easement at this location, we think it would provide X benefit, and that would be part of the analysis there. Again, we're not going to be able to add a lot of capacity within the street unless we get really radical with what we're doing. And think about, right, if, I'm going to use my arm for it, but if this is edge of the pavement here and this is a ditch, this has a lot more capacity, right, than this ditch does, right? There's just more volume, more area here. The problem is if I do like this, your on-street parking has gone to 0, right? Because it's a steep ditch, right? So there are trade-offs with all these things, and that's something we want to share with you guys for part of the decision-making process. Like, okay, this is good for these reasons, but we know we're going to give up these other things, and things that will impact you. You could be giving up very large trees. There could be improvements that are there. That there are some what appear to be historic stacked rock walls in there that we would like you to try to stay away from those, but those could have an impact on what your solutions are. We're going to try to consider all those things as best we can.
Any other questions?
The survey work, is that going to be ground survey or aerial?
That will be ground survey.
Ground survey, okay.
Although we're seeing a lot more aerial survey, just in general. There's a lot on things that you normally would have done conventional topo. You're seeing a lot more just flying it and then post-processing.
Has doubled every year for the last decade, so I mean, it's amazing how good that technology is today.
So I think that the motion would be to approve the authorization of K. Freeze and Associates to perform preliminary engineering for Algiers Street Bardage improvement analysis for a total amount not to exceed $81,525. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Further discussion?
But you're setting the contract, this is a lump sum fee, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So what you kind of said was correct, but it is for lump sum.
Not to exceed, yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. To be at most, it's not to exceed. Okay. Further discussion? All right. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you all.
You need to take a recess?
She's gonna,
Just my lung damage is agitated.
she just has to deal with this.
Yeah, it's my lung damage. So
You want a cough drop?
I got a
Still
cough drop.
stuck 'em.
You got one? Okay. Thanks. All right. If you need to take a recess, just let me know, all right?
I'll have to go home and stay home and take drugs. So it's best we press through.
All right. Next item is consider an appropriate action on a resolution accepting an application concerning the creation of an improvement district in support of a mixed-use, primarily residential development on property currently within or being annexed into the city and owned by NP Homes LLC. Finding the petition to be compliant with applicable law, approving and authorizing publication of notice and public hearing regarding the possible creation of a public improvement district, and resolving other matters in connection therewith.
Just to be clear, this is not established the bid tonight, we're just accepting the petition. We then, I think the earliest we could take it up to have the public hearing would be the first meeting in June, which is June 13th. So that is the plan. We will issue a notice in the paper about that public hearing. State law requires a certain amount of notification days. So again, June 13th would be when that public hearing would be taken, would happen, and then the action would be taken at that meeting as well, I believe. So.
Can I make a motion?
Yes.
As you read?
You move to approve as read?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you
Does it-
establishing the public hearing date as June 13th?
And establishing public hearing date as June 13th.
And establishing the public hearing date as June 13th.
All right. Have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Great. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. All right, next item, discussion and appropriate action on an interlocal agreement with the Alliance for Community Solutions Limited, that's ACS, for the provisions of technological solutions to address emergency alert response and management. Scott?
I would ordinarily put this on consent. I would ordinarily put this on consent, but I suspected y'all might want to discuss it, which is why it's on your agenda. There's no monetary implication at this stage. What this does is allow us to join that effort that the county started. They were one of the original county, founding counties. Basically, ACS is a service organization. I won't say they're not like a nonprofit, but they're wholly owned by their participating cities and counties.
It's like a cooperative.
They now have like 1,000 participants, so they've really, truly grown this effort that the county embarked upon with Bandera and some of the other neighboring counties. It turned out was truly innovative. It's amazing how much they've done. They've branched out considerably on the types of things they provide. So the things that we'll be exploring with the city, I think Clint Cook alluded to some of that today. He didn't speak to it directly, but he's working with our police chief and the county on a unified emergency response. Sheena, hopefully, this is one of those areas where I know that you've been very vocal in the past from a budget perspective on budgeting appropriately for emergency management. Participating in this group will open up many, many opportunities for us to take steps to better prepare ourselves for various types of emergencies, including our own security systems, our access points, a lot of other things that are related. So that's what this agreement does. It just opens that door, but followed on the heels of this, I imagine there will be some presentations or some projects that will surface. I know one of the things that we're looking at is, if you've ever noticed, the county all has ID badges. Those ID badges double as their ability to get in and out of a building. They're color-coded. Their color on the badge actually means something in an emergency. It tells the team, the FEMA team, or the emergency coordinator what that person's training level is and what they can and can't access just by glancing at the card. And so we are looking at getting the same system for our employees, and especially for our first responders, and I know the ESD is as well. So very, very pleased about the direction this is going as far as our interoperability and cooperation with the county. And by the way, we wouldn't be the only city. In fact, I think most of the cities in the county are already participating, so we're just kind of late to the game. We've been, and part of it is because they are supporting, this is the same group that does iInfo. I think I talked about it before. We've been piggybacking on the county's iInfo, so we didn't really need a seat at the table because they provided everything we needed. So this is going to get us an actual seat at the table where we'll take a little bit more ownership and control over the services that we get from them.
And we kind of didn't realize how powerful the existing system that we already had could actually be if we could actually get it to work.
Yeah.
So
Which we still haven't resolved.
Is this an action to authorize you to proceed?
The action is to approve the resolution, right?
Didn't say that.
Adopt the
Interlocal
interlocal
agreement.
agreement
Interlocal
with
agreement.
ACS.
I'm on the wrong thing. Yeah. So the motion.
Is to adopt the interlocal
Yep.
agreement
Yep.
with the Alliance for Community
as
Solutions.
presented.
Yep.
I move that we adopt the interlocal agreement with ACS.
I'll second.
Great. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Great. All right, next item is discussion and appropriate action on approving a balanced scorecard facilitator agreement with Your Biz Rules. I'm going to have Scott address this. I wanted to kind of tell you how this, I know that we've been talking about the balanced scorecard for a while. I sent out something to council, I think it was yesterday. I'd worked through this with Sheena. She has a lot of experience with this as well. So the balanced scorecard, components of it are what I'm very used to in terms of, they're called OKRs, KPIs. There are all these measurement systems that basically just help us understand where we are right now, define it, and help us move forward with it. I went to visit my sister a few weeks ago as we were out in Navasota learning how to tend bees, and it was a lot of fun. So we sat down and she's like, man, you got a lot of projects going on. And so she sat my wife and I down for an entire day, and we kind of worked through all of, if those of you who don't know, we have been working on our property for 7 years, and we were trying to figure out how we actually take it to the, like, how do we finish this out so that we're done with our constant construction and renovating and improving. And she sat us down and helped us work through all of the projects that we were doing, to prioritize them in the order that we wanted to define what solution, what success looked like out of that. And it was just something that she was doing for us to help out. And we came out of that with a very clear understanding, with very predefined directives that helped us understand, okay, so I don't have to stress about this every single week. I know what it's going to look like season by season by season, from the spring to the summer to the fall to the winter. And we got through the whole thing. I'm like, I hated the process, but I loved the outcome of it. And she said, well, this is what we do. And I was like, wow. So my sister works for this company, so that is my disclaimer. She is not a beneficiary, she's not a partner, but she walked me through this process. And I knew that Scott had been looking for this type of facilitator for a while, and just trying to figure out how do we step into that, trying to figure out how do we prioritize it, because it is kind of boiling the ocean when you look at, so I sent out some KPIs. I've gone over those with Sheena, and she's like, yeah, these are good. So these, like, we kind of refined what the base list was, but there were so many other things. And if we plop this down in front of council, or excuse me, in front of staff, and just say, okay, we've got this new system, now go do all of these things, it's overwhelming, it's a little bit inundating. So trying to figure out how do we take that portion by portion, which, so that we can get staff acclimated with the process, so that we can do something that is directly beneficial to council and to the people that we represent in terms of creating clarity and generating something that really makes sense. And so we kind of refined that, and he had worked with them on putting together a proposal. So this is what we've got going. I just wanted to make sure that you were understanding, that you understood what the process was, why I became excited about this specific implementation. But from there, I'll let Scott take it.
And I'm gonna pass it over to Leslie, because she did a fantastic job. So I'll just say that I was very skeptical when the mayor brought it up. I'm always a little leery when someone says, hey, I know somebody and I have to be related to them. And they have a great company. But Leslie, in all sincerity, did a fantastic job presenting on this. And I've worked, as you all know, I've worked with a number of different consultants doing different things. I was just really pleased with how we went through it. Your level of organization on the presentation alone was very, very good, but I was also skeptical about doing this focused on the CIP, because I felt like the CIP, number one, keep in mind, generally in any city I've served, they didn't have a CIP until I got there. They didn't even know what one was, so I go through the process, I do the good governance thing, I talk to them about all the things I've been doing with you all. We bring Mike Condiff in sometimes, we bring in Ron Cox sometimes, as you all have already experienced. And I kind of have this process I go through, and it's been worked very well for me. And the CIP is one of those things that, for me, is like, well, we just set these projects and it's good. But as we talked, I really, I really began to understand why this would be such a good thing to start with. Number one, it's really, really important to you all. I mean, these are the things that are going to, one, leave a mark on the community, the capital improvements you're making, the community investments you're making, but also you're going to be able to see how the balanced scorecard is going to benefit you as a council. The staff will be able to see how, I was looking for John. The staff is going to be able to see.
He had his golf shirt on, he was ready to go.
Yeah. It's going to be, well, it stopped raining. It's like, hurry up. Briefly, they're going to be able to see the level of complexity that's going to be involved, and the ease of that complexity and how to manage it on a scale that is doable. Initially, right, to start it. And then we talked about, well, okay, what does the next step look like, and how do we grow into the rest of the plan? And number one, one of my concerns was, well, if this is $30,000 to help you do this, how much more expensive is it going to be to do the rest of the organization? And I think Leslie will probably speak to that tonight, but a lot of this will establish the groundwork that we'll then build on. So it will actually be less expensive as we move forward to do the rest of the programs. Now, we may spend more time, we may have multiple bites at the apple over multiple sessions or multiple years, but I was, again, very, very pleased. So I'm not doing nearly a good job as you did, so I'm going to, again, pass it off to you. Do you have a presentation that you wanted to go through, or do you want to just talk to because they have your presentation, right?
So I was just going to talk to the proposal. It does a pretty good job, but first off, howdy. My name is Leslie Hassler. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me here, Council and Mayor and Scott. It's been a pleasure to learn more about your city, and even today as we were going around, I was like, so what do you love about Castroville? And I was just finding out how much pride there is here in the city, how much love there is for the community is, I don't know, that's exciting for us to be involved in, so thank you for that. A little bit about Your Biz Rules. I founded Your Biz Rules in 2014, so we've been doing work in the strategic planning arena across all sorts of different organizations, and we use multiple methodologies, matching the right methodology to the organization so that you achieve the results. What we found is that it's not as hard as people may feel that it is, and it typically breeds simplicity that drives results, produces greater productivity, while also everyone in the process feels better about the process. And that's why I think the balanced scorecard for Castroville is one of the better systems to be able to use. So the balanced scorecard, we did give you a little bit of information on that. I'm happy to answer some questions in honoring your time here tonight. But really what we're looking at is as Castroville grows, the complexity grows, the number of decisions grow, the number of people involved in those decisions grow. And so the balanced scorecard really will give you a framework for the communication communication to flow up and down the organization, from city staff to council, but then also a lot of the support or the technology that we're proposing actually gives you a better communication tool from the city and from council to the constituencies and the community. And so that gives a whole nother level of transparency, but I also think it gives the ability for your citizens to see what is being done when they can't actually see what is being done. And so the balanced scorecard keeps it simple, keeps it clear, and it keeps you on track. And so as I was listening to Mayor Darren share what your workshop was on, I was like, that is perfect, because this is what we do. We take that vision and we turn it into action and make sure that everybody in the organization is in alignment from stem to stern. So I think you'll see the balanced scorecard. I gave you a few stats that's been done on studies of organizations that implement the balanced scorecard across the world. It is not really about uber big businesses. In fact, majority of the people that do choose to do it have smaller organizations. We've implemented strategic planning for teams as small as 2 all the way up. So it's just a good practice. And what we were talking with Scott when we were sharing this is, starting with the capital improvement plan gives us some known places that we can overlay an unknown process. And so in that way, we're still gaining some comfort level with what we're doing. We're just putting it on another skeleton, if you will. And one of the complexities that I would envision in strategic planning is you have to have a methodology that enables the roll-up. The minute that roll-up becomes manual is the minute that the framework doesn't get used. And so we really like the ability for the balanced scorecard to help that information roll up, help you create distributed decisions that will be in alignment with the overall vision and the strategy that is set. So that is just a little bit of why we like the balanced scorecard. From just some of the benefits, we're looking at, like I said, unified vision, actually aligning strategic vision with the day-to-day work that happens. What we find is at every level, your team members become a little more engaged and they find greater opportunities that they were missing because they didn't know that that opportunity was important. And so the speed to which things actually happen starts to, it feels a little slow at first because we're getting used to it, but then it starts to ricochet and it really starts to have a life and momentum of its own, which is really fun to see that impact. And most times, a year past, our organizations are going, really? It was that easy? Like, It really is that easy, but we have to get used to it. And so that's what we're here. Our proposal includes working with the council, working with city management, making sure that we have a defined vision that's good enough, because that vision will always be refined. So we're looking for something that has clarity, but also something that gives directive to everyone that works on it. We're also going to educate the team and on what the balanced scorecard is, get terminology going, so people have a bit of time to process what we're going to ask them to do. Then we're going to come back and actually in a workshop environment go through, let's do the plan, let's do it together. We're going to be here working with those environments, being here in real person to be able to answer those questions of, wait a minute, what's a OKR and what's a KPI, and I've got them all confused. We're here to just keep it clear so that you can be able to use it. And then what we feel is really important is having that ongoing support. It's that, yeah, that made sense to me when I sat in the room with you, and 3 weeks later, I have no idea what I'm doing, because now I have to do it on my own. So we've included a lot of that ongoing support and implementation in this plan to make sure that all the efforts stick and that your team is getting the support that they need in the environment. When it comes to what's next, like Scott mentioned, we're flexible on what's next. We want to be able to meet the needs of the organization. Sometimes organizations take to it like a fish to water, and really it's just a high-level facilitation, some additional support, but it's not complicated. Sometimes, though, priorities change. Suddenly, 3 months later, we have to put something totally new together. And so we're just leaving that opportunity to have the discussion and meet your needs. I think by the time we get there, you'll be fully aware of what is needed because we're always in that constant communication.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I found that really helps is we have an innate desire to know about things that when you're in a policymaker position, as you all are, can distract you from the business of the work that you need to do. And balanced scorecards have the way, we talk about rolling up the information, but they have a way of really training yourself on how to think about things from a policy perspective. Look at your outcomes, look at your and really focus on what matters. And that's why I think businesses so often turn to this particular tool. And I should mention that you all do use all kinds of tools.
We use all kinds of tools.
This is not the only one that you specialize in. It's the one that we said we were interested in, so that's what we're looking at. But we could have very easily been looking at any number of other tools that you all are also familiar with. But I think one of the reasons why you see people turning to the balanced scorecard is because it really does allow them to weed out kind of the noise and focus on what matters, and not just focus on it, but see the process go from kind of established objective to work to fix the work that happened to then outcome, and understand, okay, was that the success we were looking for, and then go back and do it. But it clarifies, especially for policymakers, I think it really helps to clarify what's truly important and to help you prioritize. And that's why, again, I kind of came around as we talked about the CIP, because so much of what you do at the end of the day, the budget document is the most important policy document that the city adopts, because it's how you spend your money. I had a professor who used to say that, if you want to know what a city cares about, just look at their budget, because where they put their dollars is what matters. And I think that's even more true for a CIP, because the budget spends a lot of money on things that are operationally necessary. A CIP, generally, you could say it's operationally necessary to fix your water lines, your sewer lines, but we all know that the city doesn't have the strongest history of having done that. So how necessary was it, right? So I think the CIP, even more so, really reflects what you all care about, and will be, I think this tool will help you align those priorities and allow us to get even more done in a lot of respects, and and ensure that the outcomes that we're achieving really are truly aligned with this vision that we're working on and establishing together. So, sorry.
No worries. I think the important component that you even talk about is that sometimes strategic plans can feel like they're set in stone and they're immobile and they get abandoned because they don't adjust. The balanced scorecard system and a lot of good strategy planning systems nowadays are based on 90-day cycles, which is long enough to get something done, long enough to see the results, short enough that if you're wrong or if you're on a different track or you learn something different or priorities change, that you can shift. So you're preserving resources down the road. Long-term, what you'll see, and especially in situations where you may have people turnover, people coming, people going, with this kind of a framework, you're actually, the work that you are doing today will lay foundations 10 years from now, should the organization stay on track with the business, the balance sheet and the balanced scorecard. So there's a lot of, ultimately what we find is, organizations start to be able to be a little less reactive to what's happening today and a little more proactive to what they want to be happening tomorrow. So typically, as many, distractions or deviations or pop-ups, they start to dissipate over time because you're actually being able to think further and further out in your planning cycles. Any
Great.
questions?
Thank you. I'll open up to questions. I'll start with District 5. You want to start there or over on? Yeah, please.
This contract covers how long?
We're anticipating a 90-day cycle, 13 weeks.
And when do you anticipate that balanced scorecard will be fully implemented in the city and operational and productive?
So we plan on doing the actual planning cycle of it, the workshop environment, about 6 weeks into it. So from that standpoint, from the 6-week mark on, it will be in place. Your first 90-day cycle is a huge learning experience for everyone. What you tend to find out is which KPIs you should or should not be tracking, which ones are plausible to track, which ones don't make a difference, which ones really make a difference. So there's a lot of refinement in that first 90 days, which is why we've included the support to be able to get the refinement done. And typically by that next planning cycle, you'll see more focus, a lot more decisiveness to people knowing what they need to do.
My concern is, I'm not opposed to the process. I think it has potential to do a lot of good things for us. And I'm quite familiar with the process. I want to see a budget. Before you ask me to vote on the first piece, I want to see a total budget for balanced scorecard. I want to see a schedule. I want to see the schedule resource so we know who's going to be impacted, because I know this is a very intense operation. And those people in the city staff that are going to be the participants, it's going to be a heavy workload on them. They're going to need to be trained, and then they're going to need to do all the preliminary work. Then they're going to have to be able to establish ways to collect the data, which probably don't exist right now. And there's going to be a cost associated with that. What I don't see is where's the end of the project, and what are we going to save at that time? And will we have gotten more than we spent? And I'm a little bit skeptical. I'm not doubting, I'd like to see the plan, because we always talk about it in little pieces. And we always talk about the money in little pieces. And I think once we start on this, we're committing. So I would like to see the total cost, the total schedule, and how are we going to be able to measure 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now? How are we going to be able to satisfy ourselves that we got our money's worth?
Which is absolutely, this is nothing new that I've heard from you, and I like the way that you think about this in the bigger picture terms. The reason that we picked the CIP specifically was because the learning curve is pretty steep in the beginning, and different people with different levels of technology, ability, acceptance, patience. So part of this is getting people acclimated with something that is very straightforward. If you look at like what Scott put together with the spreadsheet, that first time I saw that, I'm like, this is just phenomenal. Best thing I've ever seen. I think it's the best thing that we've had here in the city for that CIP. It still doesn't bring the level of clarity that we've been asking for over the past couple of years. We're trying to get that more refined so that basically when it's time to spend money that's on the CIP that's already been approved for this year's plan, we know exactly what it is. We know exactly what it's going to be spent on. There's no questions about if it's a piece of equipment, what that equipment is, how much is left, how much have we already encumbered. So it's taking what Scott has already done, defining it further to make absolute clarity for us so that we know, like he brings something after this process is over, he's like, okay, so this is on the CIP, we've already spent this portion of this budget, this is what's remaining, and there's no question. So that's what the first portion is. Following up on that, there's a lot of detailed work that happens after that. After you get the first introduction with something that Scott has already done a ton of work on in just setting up the systems and setting up the software, determining the inputs, who's going to be doing it, how much time is it going to take them, all of that. Then you would follow that up with, if you look at the list that I sent out of these KPIs, there's a lot of them. And so it's getting that first introduction for staff, for the department heads to start thinking about that. And then, Scott, I would ask you, based on what you've seen, based on what you've learned with this, do you think this is too heavy a lift for any of our department heads or for yourself?
Well, again, I think
beginning this process.
Yeah, I think addressing Herb's concerns and comments, they're very valid. I've dealt with them before. I don't know if I think I shared with you all. I think we talked about it when Sheena was talking about her own experience with balanced scorecard. My first exposure and experience with it was in Westlake when that city council elected to follow it. And I can't tell you what the genesis of it, whose idea was it, why they decided to do it, but they decided to embark on that effort. And so as staff, we all had to learn how to work, and we didn't have the benefit of having a facilitator like Leslie and her group. And I guarantee you it would have been a different process had we had that, because we really could have benefited from it. And it's not that they didn't see the value of consultants, they did. They just didn't utilize one in that instance for that process. So I'm really, really grateful to you all to even consider this, because to ask staff to do it on our own, I've already been down the road and call it insubordination or what you like. I'm not going to do it. I know that in an organization this small, it would be asking too much. I need a facilitator to walk us through, to train it, because I just don't have enough hours in a day to walk everybody through and train it, nor do I have the skills or experience. But why did they do it? Why did that city do it? I would say this, it's similar. I wanted to use the example of standardized tests, but nobody likes standardized tests. But if you think of an audit the same way, when you perform a financial audit of a city, what are you learning from that, and why would you do it? You know, I mean, is it a waste of money? And I would suggest that anytime you're going through the effort to evaluate your planning processes and ensure that what you're doing is accurate, is being done in the way it's supposed to be done, and resulting in the outcomes that you're really trying to result, which if you think about an audit, that's kind of what it does. It says, hey, here's where your balances are, here's where you are financially, you're either you really got a problem or you're doing great, and here's what we see as far as your business activities. It breaks it down and helps you. Ideally, it's very complicated, but it takes some of that complexity and puts it into tables and graphs and other things you can understand and put your fingers on. A balanced scorecard, in a lot of respects, or any planning effort like this, kind of does the same thing. It organizes the mind and therefore the resources around the things that you're doing, and hopefully puts it in a context where you can evaluate, are we even doing the right stuff? So the way cities long-term save money by doing this type of process is they simply don't waste effort or resources in things that aren't producing the results that they want. And they can be a little bit more nimble, and that's what you're saying, the 90-day cycle. They can realize, oh, this KPI, we thought that was really important, but actually it doesn't seem to be having any net effect on what ultimately was our identified success criteria. Like, this is what we want. And the example I've used in the past is like safety. Public safety is immensely important to the community. Well, you do, one of the ways that you get, and understanding the ultimate budget, Herb, really kind of depends on how far we take this. This is one, and you're absolutely right. Like, and I can't tell you all of those because it'll be largely dependent on the input we get from council and what you determine you want to try and track and what you determine as a success. So the example I would say is, for instance, in Westlake, we had public safety. We looked at making improvements in public safety. Well, one group thought that means we need to have more officers. We've got to have more officers, and that will result in greater public safety. We need to be issuing more tickets. We need to be stopping more people, because the more speeders we have, the less safe people feel. And there's some logical conclusions you can draw from that. What we found was, no, actually, we needed to increase our patrols in residential areas. It wasn't we didn't have to increase the number of tickets. That didn't seem to make a difference at all. We didn't have to add more police officers necessarily. That didn't seem to make a difference at all. And by the way, those things were done at great expense, right? But what we learned after years, 3 or 4 years of implementation was, and the way we found out, by the way, was every year we paid a company an amount of money to run a survey. Think of the surveys that these national survey firms, they use statistical analysis and ask questions that are not leading. They know how to do a survey properly. So the town of Westlake paid a professional survey firm to design a survey, and then they resurveyed households every year. And that we utilized that data, and obviously staff didn't necessarily like being beholden to what is subjective questions for the most part. Do you feel safe? That's a very subjective question. But at the end of the day, that was the success measure that was most reliable, and that was what we were able to then as we made different changes to try and get that safety number up, to get that survey up, what we found out made the difference at the end of the day was more residential drive-bys, increasing the frequency that police officers were seen by our residents in their neighborhoods. That isn't necessarily universal, it's just what that process derives. So that's why I'm saying it is a process that a community goes through, and it really is individual and unique to each community, depending on what success, how you define success, what your values are, what your priorities are, what your goals are, what your outcomes and objectives you're trying to reach. And the balanced scorecard is an excellent method to narrow down and work through over time. But I couldn't possibly tell you what all the costs are going to be at the end of the day, because that's going to be defined by our process. I will say that whatever those costs are, this is, I mean, at any point in time, as you all know, the council has the ability to pull the plug on something if it's not working. So this is very much this initial effort would be very much a trial and error to see if it's something we like, if it works, if the organization can do it effectively, if you all are happy with these initial results. And then from there it grows. And it gets as big or as little as you all have the patience, time, and want to dedicate the resources to. I know that's not a great answer, but
I think that leaves a very open-ended question. The fact is that things like the balanced scorecard, other measurement methods that are within that, the OKRs, the KPIs, the different objectives and key results is kind of strategic level. The key performance indicators, the KPIs, are the measurements of those. They're very tried and proven areas. I think, Scott, what you're saying is that it's going to take us some time to, it's not just you put it in place and let it go. You put it in place based on what we know, based on what we feel is important. You start from there and you continually measure that. But actually I think that what we're talking about here is setting it up initially so that we've got the constructs in place to get staff to get the muscle memory just to be thinking in these terms and have a way to have an actual system that they can put it into, that they can plug it into, they can give back results on things that they're already measuring, that they're already looking at, so that we get them acclimated with it. And then going forward, that's when we would start getting into the individual KPIs and refining that. But I think that, and I want to come back to this in a second, I think that what Herb would probably like to know is if we look at the course of the next year, what do we expect if this initial with the CIP gets implemented, we get people acclimated with it, we go back through the next phase, which would be the refinement of putting together the KPIs for the different departments and defining that and getting them acclimated again with that. Over the course of the next year, what do you estimate that might be?
Well, I'll say this. I think that, and back me up if I misspeak, but I think that it won't be a 90-day cycle for the CIP. It'll be a 90-day cycle to initiate the CIP balanced scorecard. And at the end of the 90 days, we're going to know whether the things that we selected in that round worked for us for the CIP. But we're not done. I think there'll be additional rounds of refinement just with the CIP before we're ready to move on to the larger organization. So we could spend 6 months, so 2 cycles, 180 days just on CIP to ensure that we all understand not just here's what the implementation looks like, but here's what the implementation looks like, and then what the feedback loop looks like, and then what the re-implementation looks like, and then how success works. That's how this kind of spirals. To answer your question more directly, though, and I think Leslie's the best one to speak to actual cost, but what I was left with, the understanding I was left with on our call was the most expensive investment is this initial one. That as we broaden to do the rest of it, even though it's a larger effort, the foundational training and the technology will already be in place. So the expense of doing the additional KPIs and work is actually less expensive than this initial investment. So I don't know what that dollar amount is. It will depend on scope, but this is the most expensive investment for your group anyway to establish that. Other things that you may invest in, as we talked about, maybe you want to hire a survey firm to do surveys. Or maybe you want to pay for some analytical software to look at sales taxes or to look at some other thing that you want to try and analyze, better understand, chart, and measure performance with that we don't currently have access to. There are things like that you could determine you want to spend money on, but that'll be completely up to you, and it'll be driven by the data that you're looking to try to achieve and whether or not that data is readily accessible. And I think you have a real good grasp on that, Herb, just based on the questions that you're asking. I mean, you're already thinking, you're playing chess, and you're already thinking 4
I'm
years
just an
ahead.
old retired guy that went to work for IBM in 1993. So my knowledge base is very old. The mayor reminds me of it frequently. And I
I'm just
accept
jealous.
that, and I don't dispute it.
Well, I appreciate the question, Councilmember. My father-in-law worked for TI, so I'm actually used to having these kinds of questions posed a lot. A couple of things that I do want to address. Yes, I agree. This initial investment, we're thinking encompasses a lot of different work. When we find that we're supporting organizations ongoing, it's typically percentages, massive percentages less. The reason why I don't commit to a cost to you today is because I want to meet your need and not miss that mark, because that's even harder to do. But the way that we communicate with our clients throughout the process, it will be abundantly clear what is needed. To address a couple of your comments about workload, we're very sensitive to that, because if people feel that they're overtaxed, they won't do the work, right? We often say in the office.
Or you can report on how you're not able to do the work because you're doing the reporting.
Yeah.
It's a Dilbert,
Yeah,
it's a Dilbert cartoon writing itself.
Completely. But what we find is it's not so much that the newness is really the difficulty, it's the newness of it that has a little bit of weight to it. That's why we've included so much support to take some of that weight off. We're excellent at bringing things down in a very simplistic way, because we believe that what's easy gets done. And so if we're not seeing done, we're going to dig into why is it not easy. And then we find the ways within the person, within the department, within the organization, to work with who the organization is and shift. I think that's one of the benefits of knowing so many different strategic planning methodologies. I can go, oh, I can help that. Kink. You know, there's the way we're going to take this a little away, still within the framework, but I'm going to frame it differently so that it's easier to accommodate and process. There's not a single team that we work with that ever feels like they have the time to do it. It's just that unknownness that feels heavy, and we can help work through that. When it comes to the KPIs being not defined or resource heavy in trying to be able to track them, the benefit of the balanced scorecard would be that is an identified issue that then becomes back into the strategic planning process. And if it's important enough to how success is defined by the organization, then it's put into the plan and rolled out. So we're not expecting perfection day one. We're going to find those opportunities where there's great difficulty, and we're going to parking lot them. And they come back again up at that next 90 days, and then the organization decides, are we ready to tackle this, yes or no? And because of resources needed, no. This one goes here. Okay, what's the next one that gets us close, that keeps us on track and keeps us moving? So I think that's the flexibility and part of the conversation that we welcome with all of our clients and everyone involved in the process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The first question was answered, thank you, on the time frame. Help me get a grasp on something here. So the CEO of my company spends some money to institute a balanced scorecard, and at the end of which he's got a pretty easy measurable that I increase my profit enough to pay for whatever it cost me to institute the balanced scorecard plus some, okay? What is that measuring tool back to the city council when we're spending taxpayers' money? Understand the gains, understand the process, the gains. How do we measure the gain in either efficiency or savings to justify spending $5,000 instituting this process?
It's a great question.
How do I tell my constituents that, hey, we got some positive gains back on this expense? What's the measuring tool?
That's a great question. Let me ask you first, does your company do this kind of stuff?
Yeah, this has been called so many different, yeah.
There's a lot of different names for it.
Did they find it beneficial?
Pardon?
Did they find it beneficial?
Well, yes, they do.
Yeah. So in the same, I would just say, in the same way that a private company finds it beneficial, you have private, we're doing capital, we're doing community investment planning. Spending the right dollars in the right place is probably, that's your measure of success ultimately. Now, what is the right place and what is the right amount of money? You all are going to have to determine that. So that's why you're the policymakers. But the way the city that I had the most experience with doing this very thing with the balanced scorecard, the way that they were measuring it, like I said, it was all community surveys and it looked at quality of life. And what they did was they put their own definitions, much like y'all have in your mission, vision, and values. They established mission, vision, values, and they established kind of, here's what we like. Now, how do we measure that we're doing that thing? And then they, largely with survey instruments to their public, they would ask on a routine basis, are we doing this right? Are we communicating effectively? Are you getting the information you want? So I know the mayor cares a lot about communication. He's certainly improved the city's communication just in the short time we've been together. One way let's just assume that was one of the things he said we really value. We're frustrated. We know that people are frustrated. We need to improve this. And so we said, okay, communication is really important. We're going to make communication one of the aspects of every project that we do. How we can, and then you'd work with someone like Leslie to help us as staff figure out, okay, what does that implementation look like? And where do we put it in? And then how do we measure it? Well, how you measure it, generally speaking, is through your constituents. You say, okay, we did this, we did that, we put in a newsletter, we've put it out, whatever things you've come up with, those are your KPIs, I think. I don't know, you're going to help me understand that part of it. Once you've done those, you then measure the results. Well, the measurement might be a survey tool at the end of the 90 days, and you ask people, hey, did that work? Were you pleased? And we kind of did that, frankly, in a little microcosm when we did we had a good exercise in Lafayette project, learned that we could communicate better, right? We had the Country Village Street project, really made some strident efforts to communicate there. Got some really good feedback that what we were doing seemed to fit that clientele, if you want to think of it that way. And now we're at the River Bluff project with our electric project, and then we also have the AMI. We're implementing these communication techniques that we learned from these others there. So in some respects, you might say that we're kind of doing our own balanced scorecard. It's just not organized. There's no way to measure it. It's difficult for us to report to you on it. It's not, this is where a process like this would really help us to clarify exactly what we're trying to do, exactly how we're going to measure it, and put it in a report schematic that you see, and then that we are held accountable for. And I think some people are scared of being held accountable. I'll be honest. I mean, I think that's one of the things that actually reduces stress and improves morale is when people clearly understand the objective. When they understand what they're supposed to do, they understand what they're trying to achieve, and they through help understand what's working and what isn't working, because truly at the end of the day, I think we do have great employees, and all they want to do is please people. They want to please you, they want to please the public, and there's nothing more frustrating than to think that you did a great job. Here I am fixing this problem, and you've got call after call because people are pissed. And you go, I just fixed your water, why are you upset? Well, because how you fixed it.
Tell me you were going to fix it.
Right, or there was some other inconvenience that was caused, or whatever it is. So, I don't know if they answered the question or not. I think at the end of the day, that's...
They actually did, so I'll just follow up with a comment.
Yeah.
I would encourage the council to seek that back.
Absolutely.
That measurement, that feedback, and take, in some objective form. And so I fully understand what you're saying, so if we can measure that spending this $5,000 increased everybody's quality of life.
I want to be clear, it's $30,000.
Then it's well worth done,
It's actually
just
30, 42 if it's over a year.
Okay, yeah. Because the monthly, technology cost.
I would suggest that kind of like, if you look at what is the financial benefit of doing an audit, a financial audit.
That's kind of what I was talking about before.
Yeah. It's one of those things that if you don't do it, the risk to you is substantial. So this is, I think, as much about a cost avoidance. If you think about all of the time that, to Scott's point, well, let me back up. One statement that I love, if you aim at nothing, you're likely to hit it.
Every time.
Every time. And so what Scott was saying is that if the staff is doing what they believe that we want them to do, to accomplish what they believe we want them to accomplish, and they accomplish it, they're like, yeah, but no, it was this thing. And so we're trying to define that so that they're not wasting cycles, we're not wasting.
And that's a morale killer.
employees.
I'll just tell you, like, you've already dealt with it. You've probably already seen it. It's happened here in the city where, the staff was really ecstatic about something, and then, because of an errant comment from an elected official or someone else, their morale. No, all of us have been guilty of it at a time. I've been guilty of it at a time. From an errant comment that was sometimes thoughtless or sometimes just honest and candid. Hey, this is what I was really looking for. It can really kill morale because, hell, they thought they were doing exactly what you said.
It takes us to another level of sophistication. Also, if you think about what the other thing that Scott was talking about is when you, so the level of sophistication, backing up, you're looking for both lagging indicators, which are after it happens, this is the response that we get or this is the outcome of it, or leading indicators. If we do these things, then we believe that we'll experience the desired result, and that's where you go back and you refine it. Again, talking about the process that they were doing with the police or with other elements. When we're successful with something like with the communication on the country village, we look at that and say, okay, so why were we successful with that? Why did we get really almost no complaints? Why were people happy with that process? And put that into our KPIs and then measure that against the Lafayette Street project and say, okay, so what do we do here that we didn't do here where we got a lot more calls and a lot more concern, a lot more upset people, and it helps us get to that point. So
I will say this, so when I was looking at different balance scorecard options, just to put it in perspective as far as cost, on the whole, as far as I can tell, this is a much more budget-friendly option that they've proposed. The ones I've looked at a couple of different ones. Some will come in and facilitate it for about the same cost. They'll come in and facilitate the program and help you establish it, but they don't have a measurement tool. They don't have the software. The software is separate, and you pay for the software additionally, and it's considerably more expensive than what they were proposing. Others are, the other ones I looked at were primarily like software groups. They aren't good facilitators, but they offer facilitation, and it's cheap. It's not expensive because what they're really offering is their software. But the software, when you dig into it, is talk about causing being convoluted, et cetera. It's not good. It's not good.
Okay. Anything else? I'm going to keep on moving down. Councilman King?
I don't know.
Councilman Carey?
I'm at a disadvantage because I have never dealt with this, and obviously many of you have. So I was going to ask, the question would be, where do we expect to get with this? And it sounds like it's a lot more PR explanation, clarity with our constituencies. And you gave the example of the public safety, and that example begged the question. You had good feedback from the community about how they felt, but was crime really reduced?
Well, we can measure the crime empirically, so we continue to do that. We continue to track our crime rate. Yeah. At the end of the day, the survey where we were the part that that council, and I want to emphasize that council, that community, the part that they wanted to really impact was how people felt, their perception. And so even though crime was reducing, we were able to track our relative to the growth of the community. There are lots of ways to you can spend data however you want. But anyway, as we were doing that and tracking that, what they really wanted to track was, okay, but how safe do people feel? And the only way to do that was kind of subjectively through a survey. And again, like I said, they tried different things that actually empirically resulted in safer communities. Like there's no question that the data showed that the community was safer, but people didn't feel safer. They didn't feel less safe, but they wanted, let's just say the average was here, 50% of respondents said they feel, they wanted, the goal of the community at that time, that community wanted it to be here. They wanted 75%. Well, we did all those things and it didn't move. I was like, well, why didn't it move? It's because we twisted the wrong knob. The knob we should have been twisting was residential drive-bys.
So the community accomplished their goal, but the populace did not recognize it.
Right, and that's actually a great, going back to what Harold was saying, it's a great example. We just talked about how staff can sometimes be doing the wrong thing and you all, well, guess what? It also happens to council. Council will establish policy and say, we're making your quality of life better. Why are you mad? We look at all the improvements we did all these things. The same thing is true at the policy level. You can establish policies that you think are improving quality of life and that empirically you can show are, but they aren't the things that the broader community says are really important. There's something you left out. You didn't put sidewalks in, or you didn't, whatever it is. We're dragging this out pretty far.
Well, I think that the feedback loop is so important. I was a partner in a software company. We developed a piece of internet software, and we always put it out to our customers, what features are you missing, what do you want? And our most requested features were the ones that were already in there. And so instead of spending time on development, and this was just like grassroots, this wasn't as sophisticated as this, we just said, what do you want to see? And we found that was, so instead of hiring, we were going to hire additional software programmers, and we're like, oh gosh. So we hired somebody to do
Educators.
help documentation. Spend our money there. Okay. Anything else?
No, I just, my business experience is very different than yours. And I've been pretty much a sole proprietor for nearly 40 years. So I do my own analyses and then live with the results. So,
All right.
yeah.
I'm a black belt. I was for Air Force Strategic Operation 21. This is a huge thing that helps a lot. I was also Sigma 6 for the Army, black belt. It's a great tool. It helps everybody from the lowest man on the totem pole have a part in the process, because you have your department heads, but it's the people that work the situation all the time that's going to map out the process and say, well, you didn't think about this part because you only see the start and end. So it helps a lot. It pulls everybody in, and it helps just turn around, and the stop and go light of the balanced scorecard will help us, oh, why did this turn yellow all of a sudden? Instead of playing catch up of trying to figure out what the heck happened. We were green all this time and now all of a sudden we're red. So it's a very helpful tool. And once we get through the first sessions and everything and everybody on board, 6 months is the normal, because you're going through to make sure, are we collecting the right data? Is it really good? Does this answer our KPIs or OKIs? That kind of stuff. Is it realistic? And so that after the first 6 months, we can turn around and say, all right, we have to do adjustments here. We have to do adjustments there. But it's a great tool. It really is. That's all I have to say on it.
All right, thank you. So I think that there is the recommended motion would be to approve the facilitator agreement with your biz rules as presented. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion as read.
Great. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, and caveat, I'm just going to trust my colleagues here. This is way over my head when it comes to what the expectations are.
It's an interesting process.
Yes.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. All right, thank you. Good conversation. All right, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I excuse myself?
Sure, you need to go home?
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you need help? Okay, we're going to actually take a recess for a moment at 8:24.
But take care of yourself. You want your jacket on?
You keep doing over in a police car and we'll drop the car off later.
I'm good. No.
I'm gonna have him, that's just all of you. Just in
Okay.
case you- I don't want you to have that fit when you're driving a business. I know you've dealt with this for a long time. Yeah.
I don't think the weather's so.
Well, trees don't move.
All right, thank you, guys.
What's going on? He's like hanging out with us. We're a fun group, right?
Good night.
Like a bunch of mushrooms. Okay.
I was telling Samantha that sitting behind the bench there in the lower chair felt a little bit like take your kid to work day.
Sorry about that.
We don't have
I feel
enough.
like that sometimes. These chairs are so uncomfortable because you like slide down on them.
Oh, I'll tell you which ones we were on all morning or afternoon were killing me. So
Really?
I'll take this over that one anything.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, 'cause if not, I'll just pour it in.
You know, my aunt heard we were eating mixed nuts, and I always used to pick out the Brazil nuts, and she noticed that. And like a year later, I saw her, and she brought me this gallon bag of Brazil nuts. She said, I eat mixed nuts all the time, and I always pick out the Brazil nuts, and I've been saving them in my freezer to bring to you.
Wow.
And like a gallon bag of
very
Brazil.
thoughtful.
I know, she's amazing. She really paid attention.
All right.
I just want to make sure that she was
My wife is the same way, the wet rainy weather just
There's only 2 items, right?
What?
not as bad.
Yeah.
I think there's just one.
What's that?
Carol, you get to take the name tag.
Oh, really? Fantastic.
Nice, you put it in the pot. I really like that thought.
I'm gonna see how long it takes my wife to mark that one up. Slave or something. Or we can save it for you if you come back. Pardon?
We can save it.
Save it and I come back, yeah.
I have one from the first time I was on, and then I was gonna bring it back, but then we're gonna bought me a new one.
You know, I got to thinking, I go tell everybody, I've never been defeated in a public race yet. Undefeated. I didn't run for this one, or,
You're undefeated?
yeah.
We'll get started back up as soon as Deborah gets back over. Oh, and her.
The day my daughter got her driver's license, I said she's the best driver in the family. No accidents, no tickets, no wreck, no, you know.
How long did that ago?
She's still going, she's all right.
Sounds like Chaz Baden got stopped,
Oh.
like, first day or two by a state trooper
I have a
with
cousin.
his parents in the car. Do what?
I have a cousin who put a car in a ditch with her learner's permit.
Yeah.
And her dad giving her directions.
I think
Like
my
25
sister,
miles an hour, then turn right here.
I think my sister actually holds the record on the way back from getting her learner's permit with my mom in the car. She took a turn too wide, hit the subdivision sign, totaled the car.
Oh, no.
The first day in the car. She's gotten a lot better since.
You must have been taking that burn fast.
She was probably taking the example of my mom.
Well, Carrie's a fast driver too, right? She used to have to let it flip between the two of you. Yeah.
I used to. My brother and I both wanted to be very good drivers, but our definition of good drivers was different. Our KPIs were skewed.
Yeah.
His was, don't have any accidents or get any tickets, and be very, very safe. And mine was, go as fast as you possibly can without getting killed. We were both successful.
Mine's similar to your brother's, but yeah, just don't get caught, basically.
Yeah, I've changed, I've gotten boring.
I'm not trying to just go as fast as I can everywhere, but, yeah. Most of mine centered around not getting caught.
My nephew, the guy who owns the tortilla factory in the Czech Republic in high school, he actually once got caught doing something he wasn't supposed to. And the county sheriff put him into jail just to teach him a lesson. But Clinton all that day was, you know, he was at fault, not because he did something wrong, he was at fault because he got caught. Oh, that's from lunch?
Actually, let's get started back up because we got, I think, one item left, if that's all right. We have two?
Did you
Discussion of future
Yeah.
agendas.
Well,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
There's also the workshop.
Oh, yeah.
in the workshop one, we put, I don't know the, you know, we'll see what y'all do with that.
All right, Deborah, tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, we're going to reconvene at 8:30. Next item is discussion on proposed Unified Development Ordinance, that's the UDO, scope and funding source. We have Scott again.
So you have a brief report there. This was actually Councilman Dyer had requested this, so I don't know if the agenda item answered your questions. It is in the, I thought I hadn't provided for it in the CIP, but I've been revising the 2023 CIP, just updating the numbers, et cetera, the amounts we spent, and saw that I actually had provided funding for the UDC planning effort as well as the downtown planning effort. So there's amounts for both of those that are provided for in the CIP. I think, now I can't remember how much it was. I think it was $225,000 for the Unified Development Code, and still a similar amount for the planning effort, the downtown planning effort. But so that's the source of funding would be CIP. We talked a lot today during the workshop about the need for code adjustments because of the fact that you can't rebuild some of the stuff that we already have here. It's not allowed in the Euclidean zoning that's been adopted. But again, do you have additional questions that you want to discuss, or?
No, I just want to know what we anticipate spending to have the project completed.
I would.
So when we get to the end, we can figure out what do we really spend.
Right. When we do the proposals and get the RFPs back, we'll know what the range is, and we are going to get several. There are several companies that are very interested in doing this work for us. So I fully anticipate we'll get several proposals, and y'all will get to decide how much we spend. And at the end of the day, you'll get to determine whether that was worth it or not. But my estimate is a little over $200,000.
Thank you.
I honestly think it's probably, depending on...
I heard your number. I don't like your number at all.
I don't either. I don't like 200,000.
I think you said 350.
Yeah, I would think.
I think you're probably closer to the truth.
Right. But it also depends on what all, I mean, your question was absolutely right.
Depends
What
on
is
the scope.
included in there? So if you include, like, so we have both transportation planning and thoroughfare planning. So thoroughfare is looking at the actual, like, where the roads go, and the transportation planning includes bike and pedestrian, some of the stuff that we talked about during the workshop today. So that whole section of work could be a certain amount if we included several different elements. So I think that we just need to refine.
And I would like to divorce those from this planning effort, because it's very likely we'll get a planning grant that will pay for that, 100%. And I'd rather.
We already applied for one of them.
Right.
And so it's really defining what that scope looks like, which things need to be done right now. I know that the developers would like us to have that transportation.
Well, can we
plan.
talk about the scope then? Because the idea is to bring the RFP back at the May 23rd meeting for you all to look at and approve. So if you've got scope-related changes you want to make, let's make them now.
Well, I think that actually what we do is we put it out let's see, so where is the scope that you have in here right now?
Should be number 17.
Well, I'm in number 17. I'm looking for the scope. No, that doesn't have the scope.
So I gave you some
Oh, here you go,
examples
scope of
for-
services. Well, so the problem with this is that this is, I think that if you keep it just to this, yeah. So this is just the ordinances, but when I've looked at other things, let me see.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Sure sounds like it. It's funny, because I looked a while ago and there
It
was.
sounds like one of the leaks I was talking about. Dripping in a bucket.
They must have just sprouted up on top of this, 'cause I've gotten a lot of-
Well, there is the AC unit was leaking
Guess that's just-
not too long ago.
That's the gutter out of the front door.
Yeah.
It's dripping there.
It's all used to us.
You tell me you have hearing aids? Harold,
Pardon?
do you have a hearing aid?
What'd you say?
What?
Yeah, well, because
I don't have
I
them
probably,
yet, but
I was gonna say, I probably need them. I can't hear what you heard.
Did you hear that dripping?
That I can hear clearly, so
Somebody's playing a drum in the hallway over here.
Good.
You're gonna see some back to hearing aids.
I'm telling you. I also need to go look at my eyesight. Eye issues. I'm gonna have to take a day off just to do that. So I know you're looking for other scopes. The other scopes that we've talked about, including this, that are not included, because in part in answer to some of the Herb's inquiries and concerns, we have gone through as a city a lot of different planning efforts. I acknowledge that some of those efforts are still in need of some refinement. But what this effort is intended to do and what it's focusing on, and going back to kind of honing in on, okay, what are we trying to accomplish, is the UDO. And the UDO is all about our land use plan and our current CZO and our development code and how those three are not in conformity with each other. The transportation planning, the other things, we could take in a lot of different planning efforts and absolutely skyrocket the cost. But I believe if we stay to those three principal things, we should be within my budget. And that's why that's why I'm focusing on this. But again, I know that some of the folks we've talked to, Mayor, have said and keep in mind they're there to sell you something. I mean, they're there to pitch their services. They'd really like to adjust our especially our comprehensive plan, because for them it all starts with the comprehensive plan. But I don't think that needs to be a major effort, frankly. You as a community, whether it's you or not, your constituents are well aware, especially some of those who used to be former mayors who won't be go by name today. Well, they're very aware of how much money the city has spent and how much time and effort doing those efforts. And I think they also acknowledge the need for a UDC. Your P&Z is very well aligned with the city as far as the need for one. They recognize that there's one needed. And
I think you provided some
behind
examples in the agenda item about that as well.
that. About what?
About the need, some of the.
Oh, yeah. There's some justification. That's a very small list of what could be a very long list. But so scope. That's why the scope is what it is. I think the things you might be thinking of are things that, yeah, they're not in here. And you're right. We could expand them to them, and it will expand the cost. And it's up to you all to determine are they really needed. And you can make the argument they are. I want to get this done. I want to get it started. So the other thing to talk about with the UDC is just to make clear that you all made a great effort today just in the development agreement. I was very, very pleased with the conversations had. That's another item on here, but the things that you all talked about, those very well. One, it will be very helpful. Jim was in there, Jim Welch. He's on your P&Z. He is your current board chair. he said it was very helpful. I asked him, he says it's very helpful to hear you all discuss those items. And he thinks it'll be even more helpful when we go through the UDO process to be able to refer back to those conversations and understand what your thoughts are. But he and I both understand that whatever the public process ends up with may be different from what you all arrived at today. What you were focusing on was development agreements and how do we tie these development agreements to these standards. When the broader community gets involved in this planning effort, including your P&Z and again, all of your constituents, and we start to share with them what the codes are and the zoning changes, and we have public hearings, because we will have many of those as part of the process, you may find that there's a lot more education that needs to happen to get certain people on board with some of these ideas. And what ends up being adopted may be a watered down version of what you all talked about today, or it may be on steroids. My point is, it more than likely won't be the same thing, because it's going to go through a different process. When you just have 6 people in a room talking about it, you all can come with some very definite decisions. When you broaden that to a much larger group, it's going to go directions that you probably we aren't anticipating. So they're 2 separate efforts.
Perfect. More questions? All right. Anybody else have any questions?
Are we good to scope then? Can I bring that back?
Yeah, I think that's great. We got to start somewhere.
Okay.
And I think that's a good solid start. It's really making sure that our codes, first of all, accomplish what we're asking them to. They allow us to recreate the built environment that we already have. They avoid any potential new, what would you call them, nuisances. Like, I don't want to introduce additional nuisances by unifying the code. So now it's unified, but somebody can go and abuse their neighbor like that. So I think that is all part of the process. Make it clear, understandable, and not create any new nuisances. Take care of some of the old nuisances.
The other thing I'm going to tell you is this is going to come back. The RFP, I don't have any intention of changing it. What you've been presented is what we'll present on the 23rd. Between now and then, you might want to take a harder look at the RFP itself and see if things are going to change. One area that you might want to look at is on page 74 of your packet, and that's the evaluation of responses, our evaluation criteria and how we're going to score that. If you want to change those scoring methods because you think we haven't attributed enough points to one section or another, or if you want to add some in here, I think that's one area where you can make a real adjustment to make sure you get the right candidate, the right firm to do this work. Helping them understand what they're going to be evaluated on is a key part of that, and this tool is what we're going to base our judgment on, and what you're going to base your judgment on. So that's one area where I would encourage you to maybe look at, and then on the 23rd you can tell us if you want to make any adjustments to that.
Does that work? All right. Great. Thank you for the detail. Thanks for the conversation. Let's continue this as we go through. And I agree that we need to make sure that we're clear on that evaluation criteria. All right. Next item, discussion, take an appropriate action on development agreement standards discussed during City Council work session held on May 9th. Do you already have results of that?
Yeah, this item was, I talked to the mayor about it. I didn't know how the workshop was going to go. I didn't know if you'd be going all the way up until 5:30 in that conversation, and whether it'd be unfinished discussions. I'd be interested to hear what you all thought of that process. I was very pleased. What I hoped would happen, I feel like happened. And I think I've, as your staff, got very clear direction. As long as you don't change your mind between now and the next time I bring you a development agreement, I'll be very pleased with this outcomes, because I think there's some very specific things that Matt can help me further refine, and Clay and I can go and take to the developer and say, look, you were there in the room, you heard what they said, here's what we're looking for.
Was Clay there today?
He was not. Honestly, I don't know that I invited him. I probably should have.
Oh, we recorded.
I was looking for him, but I didn't see him.
Yeah.
Well, let me start on this side. In terms of feedback, additional questions, Councilman Carey?
In terms of feedback, I think that they asked the right questions. I think we loaded them with answers, and I think they've left feeling fully capable of coming back to us with a good framework.
Great. Councilman King?
Yeah, they're going to provide a document to us summarizing. I guess before I voted on this, I agree with all the discussion. I just want to make sure what's written down.
Yeah, this is not ready to be voted
yeah.
on.
No.
I put it on here in case you were ready. I didn't know how much progress we're going to
I
make.
understand, yeah, no,
If we had it fully documented and it could come back for approval, then that's great,
Yeah.
but we're, yeah.
Yes, I was very pleased, and so, yeah, I had no problem with it. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it.
All right.
I'd
Masochist.
like to see people show up for things.
Councilman Stein?
Nothing else other than it was a good session. I thought it went well.
Good.
Very beneficial.
Good discussion.
Just would like to have been able to hear.
I'm sorry?
I would like to, I wish we'd had a microphone over by Paul, because I had a hard time
I
hearing
tried.
what was said at the other table.
What?
Well, and that honestly, that's real good feedback just for that hall. In the future, if we do things there, we need to have microphones and speakers. You know, speakers to the audience at the back and microphones
Microphones on the
for the
tables.
various tables, yeah.
Yep, good call. All right.
I think it was good to have a chance to sit down and kind of get a feel for where everyone on council was on a variety of those different questions.
Great. Yeah, I think that there was some really good discussion. I think that we hashed out a lot. I was actually surprised because I felt like we were so far behind. I kind of invited some extra people because, you know, that's kind of the way that I am. And having the input, I thought it was really important, especially to have the input from the ESD, from the school district on transportation. These are all the questions. I tried to pull out all of the concerns that I had heard from the developers. And this is really out of respect for the developers because they're bringing up real questions that we need to be able to answer if we're going to be requiring them to do some of these things.
I really love the fact that the school district's going to share the demographics.
Oh, yeah. I think that's really helpful as we go through this.
I'm relieved and disappointed. Like, why didn't you get that to me the first time you got it? You mean you'd have a map where you want the schools? Yes, I would love to see that.
You know, I swear a couple of years ago, they offered.
We have demographics, but I don't have a map where all the schools, where they think they're going to need schools in the future.
I never saw any input from the school district about where they want.
Well, they never gave us input if, like, he gave us some real numbers today about if you have this many of this type of homes, you would have an elementary school of this type of homes, you'd have this many more, and so, and then the proximity, like, we had never gotten that level of detail. I don't think we ever actually asked for that level of detail.
I think that's new data for them. I really do. I think this is something that has developed in the last year, so.
Well, and honestly, they have been very methodical about school placement and what goes into this. Like, I've been impressed since, Dr. Orbach started sharing this stuff with us a few years back, being able to share that level of detail. They're really methodical with it, and I think that we can benefit from that. Hassan?
Well, and I would say it was news to me when he said he wanted the Alsatian Oaks property, because we'd had several candid conversations, just he and I, about that property. I've been talking to others that he had sent me to talk to.
That's Harold's. That's Harold's clock.
Time's up, man. Nice knowing you.
You're done.
Well,
Turn that off. It started when I first looked at it.
That's so funny.
I love that. Well, so
well, Nick learned something to do too. Yeah, Alsatian Oaks was in the room. They didn't know either. So I don't know if you saw, but when Kalos was leaving, Nick, they made a beeline to him, and they were talking. And I talked to Nick afterwards. He's like, "Yeah, we didn't know they wanted it. We thought they didn't want it. We'd sent them an offer letter for a sale, and they hadn't acted on it, and they have until July to act on it, or else we're released from our obligation." So anyway, it was a revelatory meeting for me and several others.
And I was really impressed at, I think that we had representation from every single one of the developers there.
Yeah.
Minus
Well,
maybe one from...
The attorney cheats because he represents several. He represented MP Homes, he represents, yeah. So that, we had
Same thing.
Yeah, Dean's still there.
He's still there, he's not leaving us.
So we have representation still.
Yeah.
But yeah, he covered several, but we had the actual, you had Flat Creek there, you had Willie there in person, you had Nick there for Alsatian Oaks. So in addition to their attorney, you also had some of the developers or developers reps there. So that was very good.
Absolutely. All right, great. Thank you all for putting in all the time and effort that it took to do that, and I think that we're going to be making progress, a lot of progress this year. Yeah. Well, it's nice to see after all of the education, we've spent a lot of time educating ourselves, now actually putting that into practice. That was the biggest question that I got out of the Journey series is, okay, so what are you going to do about it?
What next?
Great, aspirational, let's see action. All right, last item is discussion on future agenda items. Is there anything that I've missed that's been put on there that you still want to get on?
I
Okay.
think we have a full plate.
Nice, I love it. I do want to say on the agenda items, I want to make sure that we're more clear on what the recommended motion is. I think that some of those were not as clear as they could be, but
Okay.
I think that's just a process of.
Well, yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't review the ASFs before they went in the packet
I didn't
on the
either, I
other
missed
items. So,
I didn't have a little time.
I'm assuming you're not referring to mine, you're referring to the ones other people prepared.
The other one that already left, that we love anyway.
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
All right. With that, we are through our agenda and adjourned at 8:50.
All right, thank you
you,
all.
everyone.
Please let me know if you intend,
The first meeting.
Welcome.
assuming it doesn't rain, please let me know if you're going to the baseball game
I am not.
Sunday.
We
No,
haven't
I
discussed
know
that.
you're a no.
Are you going to be in the office?
I am likely going to.
Yes.
I hope you're going to go, because who's
I
starting out
told
the
you.
first game?